Treksploration.
Hello and welcome back to Treksploration. I'm Albie.
And I'm Chris.
And today we are talking about Star Trek, the original series, Season 1, Episode 0, The Cage, the unaired pilot, unaired till 88 anyway. The original air date was October 4th, 1988. How you doing, Chris?
I'm all right. I don't know if people can see I have a new camera, and it's put me through my paces, but hopefully I look a little bit better. I'm in full Saturday mode right now. I washed my hair this morning at about 8:30, and I didn't put any product in it. And I've been out all day sweating and then drying off and then sweating and then drying off. And I think I have like a whole like greasy blown in the wind look going. So if you're listening on the podcast feed, you should go see me on YouTube. I haven't shaved. I kind of look like one of the survivors from the SS Columbia. That's all I'm saying.
I'm doing my best Matt Decker in cosplay.
That is beautiful tunic, sir.
Yes, thank you. I'm growing the scruff for a video I'm doing for another channel. It's got time travel in it, so things happen. I slept too long. Today we're talking about The Cage. I'm so super excited to start off where it all began.
Yeah. Now, did they call this one Episode 0? I just wrote it as Episode 0 on the rundown, but I wonder if when they are like.
A lot of times I've heard Episode 0. I'd heard Episode 99. What is it? Episode 80. Like on the Blu-ray. Where do I have it? On the Blu-ray, it's the last episode because they start off with I think the man trap. They do it in that order. Mm. But
so they do it in the airing order, not production order.
Yeah. So you don't get The Cage until the last season 3 on the last disc. And that has The Cage and an alternative version of Where No Man Has Gone Before, which I had no idea existed.
There's an alternative version of Where No Man Has Gone Before?
Apparently. I don't know what the difference is, but I've been struggling since I woke up earlier tonight to figure out what the differences are in the different cages. Wow, $79? Did they really get $80 out of me for season 3? I'm glad
sure they did. They probably got it out of you a couple of times.
Holy crap. That's like in complete series price right now. Oh, well.
Right. Well, technology.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you sent me links to a series of, not just a video, but like a series of videos that like an hour and a half each with all of the differences between the different versions of The Cage. And this is the way I look at it. If you want to see that jazz, many people have documented that in many places, and we're not going to try to recreate it because it's just too much work. You know who would do perfect with this? That would be a Matt Dale thing. I always miss Matt. I miss him especially now. He would have had chapter and verse, all the stuff laid out, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, these people that make these videos and articles are like him with that. And I'm sure he probably wrote a couple of them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And I know I mentioned last time that I didn't know where the black and white and color version existed. And I did more research, and the single DVDs that came out with 2 episodes each, I think in early 2000s, the orange ones, they have it. There's a VHS copy, which is different than the VHS copy I have. This is the all-color version, which they released shortly after they did the one with the black and white and color. So the black and white color is a different version. So I ordered that. I ordered the DVD. I didn't have the orange DVD set, so I went ahead and ordered the orange DVD set. And then when I'm watching this tonight on Blu-ray, because I couldn't figure out how to get my VCR powered up in my bedroom. I think it's a power strip thing. When I go on vacation, I unplug all my power strips, and I was just like, I'll pull out the Blu-ray. So I didn't watch the VHS. So I watched the original special effects version tonight on the Blu-ray, with the wooden nacelles and all that stuff. And I prefer that one better, I think. But
really,
because I couldn't find the black and white one, which is extended. That's the extended edition, because there's some black and white clips that are in the black and white version that they lost or don't have for the color version. But after reading the article I read, I think I sent you that. It's only a few seconds here and there difference, so I don't think it'll impact our analyzing of the story. But after we record tonight, I'll probably watch that one, because that one's on this one too, which is great. This set's great, all the bonus features.
Yeah, just how many? Yeah, how many times can you watch The Cage? And you really got to be
So
in a
many
mood to go
times.
down a rabbit hole, you know. But what I mean is just like for such minutia,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
But it's like its own separate series almost because it's almost all different cast.
Yep.
So it's like, yeah,
It's
give it
almost
some
like they
time.
could have made an entirely different show out of this. If only some enterprising TV executive had considered. Oh wait,
Wait, yeah, they did maybe. So I'll definitely finish the night off with the black and white color hybrid version. But it's cool that I already own it, even though I didn't know I did. I guess by the time I got to the end of season 3 on Blu-ray, I was just watching the episodes, and I was done.
yeah, yeah. I'm kind of like the I guess a prisoner of streaming or a
Yes.
victim of streaming. Yeah, I have a couple of VHS tapes downstairs. I don't think The Cage is one of them, and I haven't seen most of those since the last time I had a VCR, which is about 20 years ago at this point.
I told you, get one at the Goodwill, $5.
No, no.
No, you have a
No.
wife. You have a wife. She won't let you have a VCR in the living room.
No, I mean, there's no reason for a VCR. It's the 21st century. It's all right. I'm not going to be watching VHS tapes. I can only think of select circumstances where I might do so.
Okay.
And that's a whole different. That's a whole different
I have a
show.
Trek and Tell when it comes to that too.
Ah,
Yes. But what's your first experience with The Cage? When do you remember seeing The Cage for the first time?
wow. I don't even remember. It's funny because The Cage looms large in many ways. When the Star Trek series came out on VHS for the first time, I was in my teens, I think, and in the video store, they had two posters. They had the one for the original series, and they had the one that had The Cage. Matt had a copy of this
Yeah, I was just
too.
going
As a
to say
matter of
that.
fact, yeah, I just cleaned out my library, and those posters were so old and torn up because even when I got them from the video, so I got the posters from the video store and I hung them up in my bedroom. So I had two huge Star Trek posters, like right by my bed, and The Cage literally was like right next to me when I was lying down to go to sleep. So I've seen that shot of Spock and Pike and the little green version of Vina as the Orion woman, and Susan Oliver's is in the mix there somewhere too, and the Rigel set is on there. So it's sort of burned into my brain. I cannot remember the first time I saw The Cage as its own thing. Maybe it's when they aired it when it premiered on when was it 1988? I think I wrote here. Yeah, 88. So I had to be 18 because there's no other way I would have been able to see it. And for some reason, I have it with a memory of the interspersed black and white footage.
Okay.
So I'm
See,
not really sure when that aired or if I'm just conflating my memory of that with my first time seeing The Cage.
I have the same Mandela effect thing with myself because I remember watching it and it being a big deal that it was going to be the first time on television. And looking it up, I think I sent you a link on archive.org. There's a whole video recording of that night of television, and it's hosted by Patrick Stewart. And they're doing behind the scenes interviews and things, and they show the first airing of The Cage, all color airing. But I remember seeing it for the first time, mostly in black and white.
Mostly in black and white.
Yeah.
I thought it was just the saucer stuff in the beginning that was some black and white.
If you watch the black and white copy, it's more black and white than color, and the color, at least the one I saw, the color versions are from the Menagerie. So
see, and I'm thinking, so you're talking about the 35 millimeter black and white print that Roddenberry would bring around on the convention circuit when he was.
But I somehow saw it on VHS.
Legacy.
So I think I had the other copy of The Cage that was like a hybrid version that I don't have right now.
I don't own any copy of The Cage, so anytime I've ever seen it, it's been either on broadcast television or on streaming.
Okay.
So yeah, so I mean the version but I know I saw the version with the black and white footage at some point. So I don't know. How about you? When was the first time you saw it? I mean, you have the Mandela effect, but do you recall the circumstance? Was it that video that you sent me of that night of television that Patrick Stewart hosted?
I remember watching that live. I think they said they filmed that they did that because of the writer's strike, and the delay of season 2 of Next Gen airing, so that it was like a filler kind of thing.
And it's very unlikely that I would have seen that live because I wasn't watching Next Gen. And I think between season 1 and season 2, I had gone away to college in Missouri, or maybe I was still in Stony Brook. But either way, I was in college and I wasn't watching any TV at all. So I probably, for all intents and purposes, that kind of nails it for me. It had to be the 88 version because I was probably still in high school or, just graduating. So I was more home than out. Once I got out of high school, forget about it. I didn't watch TV for like 5 years.
88 would have been color, I think.
Okay. So
I don't know. I remember when I was like 15, I got my first job. And every time I get a paycheck, I would go down to the video store. I want to say it was like Suncoast Video in the mall.
Yeah, I remember Suncoast. Yeah.
Yeah, they had all these versions, which were like the individual episodes. And I would get a Next Gen, or at least one a payday, a Next Gen, a couple maybe, and original series. And I'd have all these. I lost them all in the fire since, but I'm replacing them, in big lots from eBay. But
so
I think I saw the black and white one on tape.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Yes.
Interrupt. Tangent. You have frequently
intentional tangent.
You have frequently now mentioned the fire, and I never knew if you were screwing around or what. True. Like what? So can you elaborate on that if it's not too painful? What happened?
It was, I want to say, Christmas 1999. So going into the year 2000, I was just cooking like normal. And I got a phone call from my roommate at the time being, dude, you might want to come home. And it was Christmas Eve and I was cooking. I think it was cooking. And
wait, when you say cooking, do you mean you were at Perkins or do you mean you were in your kitchen?
In the restaurant. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I had been working at a corporate one for a couple months or so. And it was strange because I was dating the associate manager. And I was cooking with my ex-fiance, which I had lived in the same house, and it was complicated, but it burned down. But so I get this call on New Year's Eve, and it's my roommate saying, dude, you might want to come home. I was like, why? I can't come home. I'm cooking. He's like, the fire department wants to talk to you. I was like, the what?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So I go home, and I'm all frazzled that my house is burnt down, and it was weird because it caused drama because the other person I was cooking with, that was my ex-fiance, drove me home. I don't know why. Maybe because I was just frazzled or something. I don't know. But then the woman I was dating, which was the associate manager, was mad that I didn't ask her to drive me home. Perkins is weird. But anyway,
you got to be kidding me. Did anyone say, I'm sorry, you lost all your possessions and your house burned down and I'm here for you?
Well, yeah, after I got back, like after Christmas, but like, it was just like a, really quick thing. I think like within 20 minutes I was out the door, and I got home and it looked pretty bad from the outside. And when I got in, I had the main bedroom. It was to the right. And like, I opened my bedroom door and there was like outside my bedroom door, there was all like black ash and stuff. I opened my bedroom door and it just opened to the outside.
Holy moly.
Yeah. And that's, and I had built a shelf that the complete wall was all my Star Trek VHS, and those were completely gone. My walls were covered with the Playmates action figures. They were all on the walls with like thumbtacks. So the only thing left after the fire was like black walls with like the metal from thumbtacks and melted action figures on the ground.
Oy.
The only two things that survived was my family photos, which is weird. They were just one corner of my bedroom closet that didn't get burnt. Mm-hmm. And then my Cabbage Patch doll that I got when I was like 11 or 9 years old, 8 years old, because he was on my waterbed. And my waterbed like didn't burn in the fire, of course, I guess, because it's waterbed, so it dissipated the heat or something. Like the wood part got burnt, but the mattress didn't. And then looking back at this story, how did I have multiple girlfriends and fiancés when my house was all Star Trek action figures, Cabbage Patch Kids, and VHS tapes? I don't know.
You told me you were the head chef, so apparently that carried some kind of cachet.
It did. It was like I was the ultimate prize, and the people were like, "Why did you stay at the restaurant so long?" That's one of the reasons. For some reason, I was the biggest fish in the smallest pond, and it seemed to work for me.
Hey,
Now
good for you.
I always meet women at work, but of course now for the last 10 years I worked at home, so that hasn't really helped.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Did they have any reason what started it?
Electrical outlet.
So
yeah,
maybe that's why you unplug all of your power strips before you go on vacation now.
I do. Maybe. Oh yeah. There you go. I unplug everything when I'm going to be out of town. So even the hot water heater. So I unplug everything.
Jeez.
Maybe that's why. Even though insurance is good and stuff, but still I don't want to lose everything.
Yeah, but still, I mean, a lot of that stuff, insurance is great, but you can't replace a lifetime of like collections. I can't imagine if I lost like all my books, and what are you going to do? Something that you've been collecting for the last 30 plus years.
And it was.
Who am I kidding? At this point, 40 plus years.
40 plus years.
I'm old.
Right? It happens. Matt Decker happened to me. Yeah. So, so I didn't tell anybody because it was Christmas Eve, so I didn't want to ruin anybody's Christmas or stuff. So I just went to my parents' house, for Christmas, and enjoyed Christmas. And they're like, next couple of days they found out, and they're like, "What? You didn't tell us?" I was just in shock, kind of.
Oh, well.
It was cool. I was homeless for like 3 months after. Okay. And lived in a van, had a very good time. Had 2 jobs. So me and our old webmaster, Steve, ended up getting an apartment together. So, but
okay. And I think I heard that tales of you and Steve living together on your Conversation with Albie podcast.
Probably. Yes. But it was a crazy time. So that's why I don't remember when I watched The Cage.
I mean, we can forgive you for that. Your excuse is better than mine. Let's put it that way.
You were in college. You were being Mr. Smarty Pants, Mr. Neurosurgeon. It's okay.
Yeah, right. A neurosurgeon. I am God. I'm a neurosurgeon. I think I'm God. Yes. Most neurosurgeons do. Yeah.
Can you give us an episode synopsis for The Cage, Chris?
Sure. The Cage, Star Trek Episode 0. After a deadly mission on Rigel 7, a world-weary Captain Christopher Pike is contemplating giving up his command when the USS Enterprise encounters an old-style radio distress call from the long-lost SS Columbia. It leads them to the planet Talos 4, where they find the grizzled survivors of the Doom expedition and the ethereally beautiful Vina, who was an infant when the ship crashed. But when Vina leads Pike away from the rest of the landing party, he gets waylaid by a race of telepathic aliens and put into a subterranean menagerie. The Telosians bombard Pike with a series of illusions to study his reactions and get high on his feelings. At the center of it all, the alluring Vina. But Pike refuses to take the mental bait and vows to break out of his cage or die trying. This time for the first time on Star Trek, the original series.
Dun, dun, dun. We're talking the original series, Chris.
The original series. I've come home.
Yes.
I've come home. Yes.
This is my first Star Trek.
Toss, baby.
Yeah.
Toss,
of course,
toss,
it's not really.
Baby.
I don't know. Is it really the original series? I'm counting it as such, but it's definitely its own thing, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we got Spock. We got Spock.
We got Smiling Spock. Happy, smiling, limping Spock.
Yes, smiley, limpy Spock. And what are your first impressions of The Cage?
To me, this episode, growing up and seeing it probably whenever we talked about it, was teenager, late teens, early 20s. It was always slow and weird and different and not my Star Trek. But as I watch it more and more over the years, I think it's one of the best Star Trek pilots ever made. Not to show my hand early.
I think people are going to realize that we come in this maybe predisposed to be in love with it because it's the original series. And
yeah,
I have to say, every time I watch The Cage, I like it better and better.
Right?
I absolutely love this pilot. I can't believe how solid it is. As a pilot, there are some hokey things, and even the hokey things I love. And this, again, if I can go on a little tangent.
Always intentional tangents. That's us.
The differences in The Cage are, in part, what inspired me to try to become a writer. Because when I tried to think of myself as a writer, I had been reading nothing but Star Trek books forever. And I always envisioned myself writing a tie-in fiction book, like that one. But it was always a Star Trek book. I even had dreams about it. I had a dream once where I had like 3 Star Trek books that were published. There were the covers and everything. But a lot of my inspiration for what I wanted to do in the books, in the novel series, was to try to reconcile canonical differences, canonical mistakes, and just watching The Cage for the first time and seeing how different it was, and then trying to reconcile that with Where No Man Has Gone Before, which was actually a little bit easier, but then with just the Enterprise as presented in the original series, once they hit their stride and it went to series with Shatner and McCoy, with you know what I'm saying, as we know it. So the first time I saw The Cage, I was thrilled because I was just like, okay, how do I explain that? How do I do that? And I still find differences in it that I'd never noticed before. I sent you a picture earlier of a mission patch with a wacky C on it. Maybe
what is that?
Can we put that up? I don't know if people have
I can
seen
set up
that
right here.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
weird.
so you see, first of all, it's on a blue tunic. So, okay, is he sciences? No, I guess not, because they got this wacky C. And then I thought maybe it's security, because it looks like the guy behind him on the elevator, on the turbo lift. I'm sorry. It looks like they both have it. And
maybe they're Canadians.
maybe, yeah, maybe they're Cardassians in disguise.
There you go.
Right. They're Cardassians before they figured out the makeup. But then I looked up online just tonight because I had never seen that before, and I have done a deep dive on the mission patches. I love like figuring all that out. I think I've mentioned that before, but I found a set of 7, I think, or maybe 8 on eBay that are supposed to be the original Cage era mission patches.
Wow!
And they have 2 other ones, one with pi. And one with, it looks like a stylized Y, which I'm sure is some kind of Greek symbol or something. I'm not really sure what it is. So, and then I tried to, before I was writing the rundown before we got on mic a couple hours ago, I'm trying to figure out what those patches were for. What department did they denote? Because it wasn't sciences, it wasn't services, which has since become ops, and it wasn't command. So I'm guessing the C is security because it makes sense the way they were placed. But I didn't see either of the other 2 on camera. Anyway, not yet. So I don't even know where those patches came from, but they were on eBay or something. It was pretty cool, though. It was pretty cool.
It's not this book that has the descriptions. It's the other one. What's the other book that came out around this time?
The only book that I have that gave descriptions like this,
technical manual, right?
No, well, Bijo Trimble's Concordance.
Oh, okay.
With the wheel on the cover that did all the episodes, and she had a section in there that described all of the insignias and the departments that they denoted. And I think she might be the one that called Red Shirt Services, the little question mark thing where for engineering and security, but none of this was codified yet in the Cage. It was just a pilot. So, who knew if they even knew? They probably just made a bunch of them and said, make symbols. Different. We'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I had never seen the C before or the pi. The pi, I'm guessing, is either the baker or the chef, right? Making that good old pecan pie because, Captain Trip Tucker made him make pecan pie on every ship from then forward.
I guess. Trip Tucker? Do you mean the late Trip Tucker?
Oh, that episode? No, it's they changed the end of the holodeck for security reasons. That never happened.
Oh, I understand. Okay,
gotcha. No. So
let's see. So you think that he's the baker, and I think Pi is the ship's computer, because they were still computers like old time NASA computers, which were just people that could do math really fast. So
like the Hidden Figures over there with sliding.
Yeah. That was their version of computers. That's what they did.
I'll take it. And it'd be interesting to find out. I'm sure Captain Charles or someone else knows, and they can help us out.
Lambda were the frat.
Or the frat chef was Lambda because rack of lamb, and then Pi was baker because of all the sweets they did.
I adore rack of Lambda every Easter.
Never had this stuff myself. I don't eat any.
Actually, what's in Trolley X, where Rod Berry's the chef calling down saying, "Yeah, we're making the synthetic meatloaf look like synthetic rack of lambda.
Rack of lambda.
I love
That's
it.
funny. I noticed stuff every time too. This time I noticed a backpack. I never noticed landing party backpack.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
That.
I was like, wow, what? Huh?
Backpack. I was like, I need that Star Trek backpack. And the other thing I noticed, I always checked out Captain Pike's TV when he goes to lay down in his quarters because it looks like a really cool 60s.
It's like a 60s. It's a big console set.
Huge. And I was like, I want that. Where is that? Can I find that? And I researched it, and it doesn't seem to be an actual production model. It seems to be some kind of furniture built into a TV for something. And it was used in another movie, I think. There's a whole rabbit hole for that. But it's not an actual model that you can just get, or I would have probably had it. But I noticed there looked like a police hat on top of the TV.
Yeah, so I can give you chapter and verse on that because, again, with props, I kind of went down a rabbit hole. If you've ever seen the Star Trek New Voyages, which turned into Phase 2, they were so dedicated to recreating the props as accurately as possible. And the guy who was in charge of doing it had like a blog on their site talking about props that they would find on screen and do as best as they could with the screenshots and then recreate them from scratch so that they would be accurate to what you saw on TOS. And one of the special things they did do was that hat that's on Pike's TV or on the shelf. You just see it. It's in a pan, and they recreated it for their series. Again, it was just sitting in the background, and they just dubbed it as kind of like a command hat or like a uniform cap that you would put on when you had a dress uniform on or something like that. It was much more militaristic than you saw in TNG. And I noticed that hat come back in its own way in the Kelvinverse.
Yes.
Because there's a scene at the, I don't know if it's the end of Beyond or at the end of Star Trek 09, but they're all in grays and they're wearing hats like Pike's hat in his quarters. So, yeah.
It's so cool how something so small and just thrown in there can like create a whole separate branch of the universe.
Yeah, no, it's crazy because there are other things in this too of different costumes, different props that I had to look up because I wanted to know more about it. It'll come up in the course of the discussion, but I mean, we could do an entire show just based on the differences and these little minutiae, you know.
My first thought wasn't Gene Roddenberry like, didn't he write a police show before this or something? And I was thinking,
what I understand,
maybe a police hat or something thrown in there as a nod to something else. But then I did see a drawing of a uniform that incorporated the cap online, maybe from one of the technical manuals or something. But it just seemed very interesting. But if anybody knows where that TV is, let me know. I want that. I want that. So much cool stuff. I think I sent you some videos on how they just not too long ago found the original 3-foot model of the Enterprise.
Yeah. I've been following that since it broke because that was kind of all over the internet. Even in mainstream news feeds were playing it. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, so I went down that rabbit hole. Very interesting. But this was filmed with, I think, the 11-foot model. So that was more of just like an inspiration prototype model. But this is the 11-foot model that's in the Smithsonian Air and Space.
Are you sure? Because I think the guy that was on YouTube was saying that they had that model with the Bussards had like the little pylons on them.
Yeah,
and then they cut them down.
Yeah. It's usually
I was under the impression that it was the 3-foot model that they used for this. I could be wrong. I don't know.
I could be wrong. I'm sure somebody.
You know what? We're both wrong. Somebody down in the
right?
comments below.
But that's another reason I watched it without the new special effects. So you watched it with the new special effects, right?
Yeah. And I have to say, the one that struck me the most, it was just absolutely gorgeous, was when the Enterprise approached Talos 4 for the first time. They did this weird shot where you don't often see it in Star Trek, because Star Trek, they got so rote with just the ship flying past the blurry planet, right? Just in a straight ellipsis. In this one, they took some real liberties, and they had Talos, it was sort of up in the top corner of the screen, and the ship was sort of coming in underneath it, and it just was unlike anything that I had ever seen in Trek before, and I didn't remember that shot at all. So I'm wondering if this may be the first time I've actually sat through no, I can't. No, I can't because I did my chronological rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat through this one time before, at least with the remastered, and maybe I was just so freaking sick of watching Discovery that I got to the cage and I was already half asleep from Discovery season 1 before embarking on Discovery season 2. I'm not sure. Actually, I think it goes Enterprise. I think it goes Enterprise, the cage, and then Discovery. I think the cage comes before all of it. But regardless, I noticed that shot this time.
Well, let's talk more about the different versions after you let people know how they can find out more about us and support us.
Yes. We will doff our gray command caps to all of our Treksplorers over on our Patreon site. That's patreon.com/Treksploration. You can go there. That's our main hub of activity. Go there, comment on this show page, and tell Albie where we can find that TV. There are also many tiers to join as members, which if you're hearing this, you're a member because this is a bonus show. So
I might let this one go out for free because it's the cage.
Ooh, yeah.
Just to support all those people following us on YouTube. Thank you guys.
Yeah. So you YouTubers, you're getting a
Free
sneak peek of bonus shows, the kinds of things that we do over on the bonus site for the Patreon. For the Patreon supporters. You can also find us on Instagram at Treksploration Pod. You can X us at Treksploration. You can email us at treksplorationpod@gmail.com. You can call us on the phone at 707-847-6682. And you can send me a 3-foot model of the Enterprise at P.O. Box 542, Bayport, New York, 11705. I'll pick it up out of the mailbox, and I promise I'll share it with Albie. We'll swap it back and forth. All right. So, but yeah, any of those ways that you want to reach us, and of course, right here on the YouTube channel, just go to the comments below and tell us what you think of the cage. Tell us what you think of my scruff. Tell us what you think of Albie's cool Admiral Decker tunic, or is it Commodore Decker? He turned into an admiral at some point.
It's actually old thing because it's from Star Trek Las Vegas Experience, branded. I bought it while I was there because they didn't have next gen outfits that fit me for the photo op. I was like, Star Trek, it's skinny nerds and fat nerds. How do you not have my size? I'm a fat nerd. This is Star Trek The Experience. They're like, I'm sorry, you can look and try those on, but I think the biggest was medium, right? Because they had this whole in Captain Picard's ready room on the Enterprise D bridge.
Why I'm a medium.
Right. You're the exceptions. Usually it's 80 pounds and 800 pounds. I'm on the 800-pound category. Not really, but close. But I was like, fat nerds. He's like, I know. This is all they have. So they're really nice. The season 1, season 2 jumpsuits. And it was in Picard's ready room, but with like on a big rack where you change in the ready room. It was weird for the photo op, but they didn't have my size. So I had to go down to the merchandise shop and buy something. And I was like, do I buy the uniforms are like $80, $100. Like, do I buy next gen? Do I buy original series? It's next gen bridge, but I want this original series one. So I just bought this one and had my photo on Enterprise D with this. And I was like, time travel.
There you go.
But why wouldn't they have fat costumes for the photo ops? I mean, there's a lot of fat nerds out there.
Those first, second season next gen costumes are very unforgiving. Most Star Trek costumes are very unforgiving, unless it's the Monster Maroon, because they had a fat old cast to dress and make look good for the camera.
Speaking of a fat old cast, fat nerd.
Well, I mean, so they had your size in the gift shop, but not for the photo op. I'm confused.
Which means they had access to it. I think it was just like a marketing thing. So maybe they had mediums. So the 2 skinny people and the 2 fat people had to actually buy their own rip-off.
I'm so confused. Wait, so they had it for sale in 2 different places?
No, for the photo op, Picard's ready room, they had like loaner uniforms you could put on for the photo ops.
Oh.
But they were like all medium, right? So there's no
I gotcha.
super skinny nerds and super fat nerds. So I had to go down and buy them. So I bought this.
You know what? I'd rather buy it. Like, would you want to use the communal photo op uniform?
In that situation, yes. Just because they look like actual TV William Tice, was it?
Scabies.
It was Vegas. The whole thing is scabies. Speaking of, we got to go soon.
Vegas. We got to go to Vegas, baby.
Star Trek Las Vegas. We got to make that trip one time, you and me.
I thought that they closed down. They're not doing that anymore.
The experience is closed down, but they have the fan convention every year. It's like the biggest Star Trek convention every year. It's in Las Vegas in August. This year,
we're going to have
1st through 4th.
We're going to have a Treksploration convention with our fans, our dedicated crew of Treksplorers, including our lieutenant commanders. That would be Scott Seligman, Cosplay Dad, one of all fantasy fan. Welcome, lieutenant commanders, to the Treksploration Vegas extravaganza, is what I hope to say one day.
One day.
And then it will be my very special privilege to introduce everybody to Captain Charles from Texas, because, of course, Captain Charles will be the guest of honor.
Yes.
We'll be roasting Captain Charles, so everybody get your wittiest Captain Charles jokes, and I want to see him cry a little bit.
He'll be in the center seat. So.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a convention out there in Vegas, but
I don't think we can make it this year. It's too short notice. August 1st through 4th, maybe next year.
Well, we thank all of our patrons on the Patreon site and all of our members of the community over there as well. I mean, you don't have to be a supporter, but it sure is nice. You can also join the community for free. There's plenty of things that you can do over there on our Patreon site, patreon.com/Treksplorers. And we got some feedback from Lieutenant Commander Fantasy Fan on the YouTube. He watched that video with Captain Charles from Texas, and this is what he wrote to us. This is great that you do this, but the price is too high. $40 a month, you robbers. He didn't write that, but anyway. He continues, you should allow the lieutenant commanders in your discussion, but I will enjoy listening to your discussions and commenting nonetheless. So, Albie, I know you saw this, and I know as the consummate host and the Treksplorer extraordinaire, you came to Lieutenant Commander Fantasy Fan's side, and what did you tell him? What did you tell him?
I said that's a great idea. I think, but parenthetical. I don't think it's a good idea to have all our lieutenant commanders in our meeting. Otherwise, the software won't handle it. So
yeah, that's true.
I'm thinking eventually our lieutenant commander base will be very wide, but he is a founder. So I said, you know what? Our founders, which are our patrons for the first 3 months, should be invited to our next captain's roundtable, our next captain's table. So our captain can meet our founders. So anyone who's a patron in the first 3 months here, I think it ends at the end of June, beginning of July is the cutoff. First 3 months,
I'm not really sure.
You're our founders, and you will be invited to the next captain's table.
The end of June. That's like very soon. That's
not far. You got about a week. Yeah, but if you sign up on Patreon in the next week, you are eligible to take place in that captain's table.
Wow. We've been doing this for 3 months.
Weird, right? No. Time flies when you're old as hell.
Can't be. Holy crap-a-roni. So thanks for everybody sticking with us for 3 months. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a whole quarter of a year right there.
So yeah, I don't want to exclude anybody, but it's just a matter of if we're going to continue this and do all the 900 episodes, we got to be able to at least break even on it so we can pay for the things that cost us to do the thing. So if we do have that amount and we are able to have that amount of patrons, it would be too crazy to have that many people in one meeting. Yeah, but if you want in, just call and ask. I'm sure one of our captains can bring you in as their number one. You never know. Might have a mentor program. We talked about that earlier.
I'll be Tilly. Anyway, I think that's a great idea. And I look forward to seeing how you jockey all of that together. I'll just show up as usual and
I'll send out the invites and you just show up.
I'll smile and say hi.
Show up and look pretty. I'll send out all the invites. The Fantasy Fan is definitely on the invitation list.
All right. So you've heard it here first and last, because by the time this comes out, there'll probably be about 6 days left to do this. So get on the stick, go over to patreon.com/Treksplorers, and you too can join us for one of the Captain's Roundtables in the near future. Or the far future, but Either way, if you're a founder, you'll get it. You'll get on one of
Exactly.
them.
And there's going to be other founders perks, in the future. So, maybe special release merchandise, different things. But
Yep.
we really want to support the people who are supporting us at the beginning, just starting out. And we appreciate your confidence in us.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone who's supporting us, and thank you, everyone, for spreading the word. And if you're an actual founder and you can, shapeshift, we'll be terrified of you. You can be on every episode.
Absolutely. If you have any godlike powers, you're in, because we don't want to mess with you. And you know what? Discovery really killed our algorithm on YouTube.
Yeah, Discovery. You know why? Because Discovery kills everything.
I guess. But since we're coming back with next gen and a couple other things, it's starting to go up again. We're starting to get views again. So I'm hoping that we swing back and we just don't cover Discovery for a while again.
Well, no, we have literal years before we ever have to talk about Disco ever again.
So by then, if we take a hit, we won't even notice it. Right. But thank you to everyone watching. And if you can't support us financially, please support us by sharing. Let people know in those groups and everybody. I'm sure you got a Star Trek friend. Let them know about us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're watching this, other people that want to watch this. Mm-hmm. And it's really how these shows get built is just by word of mouth. There's really no other algorithm besides brick by brick. Exactly. So.
I was watching our last episode and you said you had a secret about sliders, but you'd never shared the secret.
I had a secret about sliders?
Yeah. You don't remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I know I do. Yeah, my secret about sliders. It's kind of an open secret, but I really thought sliders improved immensely when they introduced the Cro-Mags as a
really
villain. I loved all the Cro-Mag storylines, yeah. And you know why? I think it's because up until that point, and this is what, like season 3, season 4, they're already on Sci-Fi off of Fox, and I'm still sticking with sliders. And I'm still not liking sliders. The show never seemed to have any kind of direction or focus. The second they introduced the Cro-Mags, it's all of a sudden it gave them like a hard thing to backstop against, and it gave it a new direction and new stakes. So I think it's just because it brought some kind of direction and structure to the narrative instead of just going to bullshit planet number 1, bullshit planet number 2, hippie planet number 3, and telling really bad stories because they want to do a what if kind of show. It became more of an action oriented, plot driven show because of the Cro-Mag invasion. And I enjoyed the hell out of that. So I know a lot of people say, oh, the Cro-Mags, that's when it got bad. And I'm thinking it was already bad. The Cro-Mags at least gave it something to latch onto. So that was my dirty slider secret.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's like your dirty secret. Yeah, Cro-Mags are very divisive, I think. I enjoyed them. I thought, of course, there would be a planet where Cro-Magnons didn't get extinct, But so makes sense. So, and they always remind me of the alien Nazis from Enterprise.
Oh God! Oh boy!
So you didn't like those?
Oh no!
Okay, we'll get no. I've got faith in the heart.
We got alien Nazis right here in TOS, so we don't need to worry about alien Nazis.
But they were hot blondes, so that's different.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so how do we want to talk about? How do we want to talk about the cage? Do we want to go beat by beat? Do we want to just go random?
I mean, you're the host. You tell me how you want to approach this, because I mean, I have a lot to say, and we were doing initial impressions. Do you want to maybe start with some more initial impressions?
We've got to have more initial impressions, because this is a cage, man.
Yeah. Well, I was struck very late in the game. I had watched, Star Trek for decades. One night I just sat down and watched this movie called Forbidden Planet because I knew it was a classic. And I could not believe how much Roddenberry ripped off Forbidden Planet for Star Trek. I mean, it was almost like beat for beat. It was so similar. And now anytime I watch The Cage, I'm thinking about Forbidden Planet and how much of the DNA of Forbidden Planet made it into the Star Trek aesthetic. But then I'm sitting there, I'm seeing the shot of the Enterprise go across a star field. And I'm thinking, how revolutionary and wonderful must that have been for you as a viewer in the 60s, seeing this on your TV, and then getting onto the bridge of this starship, which just seems so realistic. Say what you will about the plywood sets and the weird costumes, the velour and everything. This is science fiction that wasn't like Lost in Space. This was science fiction that was trying to take itself seriously and build this world that you could immerse yourself in. It wasn't just, pew, pew, pew lasers and kiddie shows. It was like a serious drama for grown-ups. And the entire aesthetic of the bridge and the quasi-militaristic bent of it, I think, lent to that seriousness. And every time I watch the original series, and especially The Cage, again, I try to put myself in the place of people who were just seeing it for the first time in the 60s and what it must have looked like to them against a backdrop of, I guess, kitschy sci-fi, maybe schlocky sci-fi,
like
from
Lost
the
in
30s
Space,
through the 50s.
Flash
Right?
Gordon. Yeah.
Yeah. Serials like chapter plays, the serials, and maybe trying to elevate it a little bit. And I feel like Fantastic Planet did that as well. It was a cerebral story with a very interesting look and a very interesting plot. And if it had to rip anything off, I'm glad that Star Trek ripped off Fantastic Planet, because it is just phenomenal to me how complete this universe feels from scene one on the bridge of that ship. You could go anywhere, but it's all right there.
It is, I think, amazing how complete the universe is in this first episode. There are some things like you mentioned, but like what Spock said, something like switch to rockets, like they got rockets strapped to the outside of the saucer section. But little things. But other than that, the main universe is pretty much the same, which is crazy to me how well it was written and put together and produced.
Yeah, I mean, again, say what you will. I think Roddenberry has his pitfalls, but when he was on, man, he was on. And I feel like not only does this grab you visually, but I have this thing. I guess the only, and even sometimes with Twilight Zone, but anytime when I was a kid, I liked science fiction, but like say we were watching The Outer Limits or we were watching another anthology show, there was always this base inertia that I had to get through in the first act in order to get invested in the characters to want to continue watching the show. I don't know why, maybe because it was an anthology show, so you had to learn all of the characters fresh from the beginning. And there was always just this baseline of, oh, do I want to invest mentally in these characters? And then after 5-10 minutes, if it's well written, it gets good, and then you get into it. It surprised me how little there was to none of that when it comes to The Cage. Like, I feel like it's compelling right off the bat. I feel like the universe is interesting enough where you don't have to wade through some kind of like mundane first act to get to a twist. It just starts off like right out of the gate as sort of arresting might be too, that might be too grandiose, but it holds your attention and it picks your head up. And again, when I think of TV at the time, I think that is another way that this was a little bit groundbreaking in the sense that you didn't have sort of that week after week anthology rote storytelling convention that you did with something like The Outer Limits. Once the credits went off with all the neat, like The Outer Limits was great because the way it opened, it's like we can control your TV. We all, but then once the show started, you were like, oh, okay, this is kind of boring, And I don't know. Maybe that was just me as a kid. How about you?
Well, as opposed to Twilight Zone, which sucked me in every single time, I think that was because of the writing. I always appreciated really good TV writing, and that was one of those things that I was on board no matter what. Being just slightly younger than you, I didn't really have that much exposure to the classic sci-fi stuff. before I did Star Trek. Star Trek was really my first sci-fi thing. If anything, maybe Land of the Lost, because that was running on Saturday mornings. I think as a kid I watched that before Star Trek. So Star Trek was always my baseline of that, and The Cage, I didn't have any trouble getting into it really. I found the acting, watching it now, I found the acting really good. Like, who is it that played Dr. Boyce?
Dr. Boyce was played by John Hoyt.
John Hoyt, amazing job. I mean, his character seemed locked in, and I want to see him, throughout a whole series. I think I'm glad, but I think NBC was wrong with needing to recast this show, because like everybody seemed really good in this pilot. Like, I would watch this show as a series. I'm glad it happened the way it did, or we might not have all the Star Trek we do, and we wouldn't have Shatner and different things. But the acting was great, and the cast was great in the first episode. I don't know if that's to do with the writing or the directing or both, or just really good casting. So it must have been very disheartening for Gene to have to recast for a second pilot.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading a little bit about that, but I maybe have two responses to that. Number one, the Twilight Zone. You said, I think the Twilight Zone, you were easily sucked into it from the beginning because you had those setups by Rod Serling, who was so charismatic that he would make you want to watch the story. Like, he would give you a preface and hook you in, and then you would want to watch it. But one of the things that always struck me about the Twilight Zone was it was filled with working actors, and they were 9 times out of 10 phenomenal. And it's sort of an acting style that has gone away now. I feel like that was a byproduct of the 50s and the 60s, when you had actors doing like live teleplays going out across the country, and they had to be really good. They had to be on their game. There were actors on the Twilight Zone where they were phenomenal. And I feel like John Hoyt, who played Boyce, is of that school. So no matter what you give that guy to do, he is going to come in. He's going to be naturalistic. He's going to be locked in. He's going to be believable as that character, because that's just what he does. He's just classically trained, amazing actor that can just take on that role. And I feel like all of the cast in this had that to some degree. But Boyce especially, it doesn't hurt also that he comes in bearing martinis, which, for me.
Yeah, you can see where the groundwork was being laid for the Bones character eventually, I think. They were carrying that same idea over, but it's sad that we didn't get more from him. I really enjoyed his character. Another tie-in together between the good writing and the Twilight Zone is the Twilight Zone always had some kind of message or meaning, and it always was like, or at least for the most part, it always had, it was about something. And the original series always was about something. And I think this episode, The Cage, was our first example in Star Trek, of course, of any Star Trek, but it was about something. What did you get out of The Cage? What was it about?
It's funny because I was thinking about it this morning before I rewatched the episode, and I was thinking, am I going to, now that I'm looking at this more critically for the show, find problems with the message of The Cage? Because I was thinking more along the lines of, I guess, humanity striving into the void, into the stars. And I for some reason in my head, I found it resonating as much more imperialistic, much more in terms of manifest destiny. But it really wasn't that at all. I mean, what it came down to was, and I think this is maybe where I conflated the two, as human beings, we're built to strive. We're built to face things head on and to meet challenges and grow as a result of those challenges. Otherwise, we die. I mean, Boyce has this thing when Pike is pouting in his quarters because people died on Rigel 7. Boyce says a man either lives life as it happens to him, meets it head on and licks it, or he turns his back on it and starts to wither away. And I said, okay, that is quintessential Star Trek. They've said that a million different times in a million different ways, but here it is right in the pilot with a doctor with a martini spoon feeding you that this is just a cornerstone of this show. How about you?
I got that, and I got that at an important time in my life where I think I need it, because I'm at that crossroads in my life right now. I don't know how long I've been there, but Serenity's on a staycation at her mom's, so I have 10 days by myself, maybe 11, something like that. So I have no drive or direction or need to take care of someone, to be there for someone, to do something, and I find myself just like sitting in a box, with glass in front of me that says break in case of emergency. Like, and I'm wondering if I've chosen to step back from society and just wither away and die, because that's how I feel. So I'm trying to contemplate this as I watched this episode yesterday and today. Should I do something for myself? Should I engage with life again, or am I content to wither away and die? Am I done? Is my story over? And this episode really made me think about that for the first time in my life, about my life. So I really appreciated that message. I'm still working on it. I'm not sure which way I'll go.
Well, I mean, I would hope that you would take the first option, not the second option, and face things head on and find new challenges. It's funny you say that, because I'm currently now at a job where I get a lot of stress, and I find myself
crazy.
But I find myself increasingly saying, what's next? If I step away from this, how can I do things on my terms and, still be challenged and still be fulfilled and still do the things that give me a sense of personal satisfaction, not just being a workaholic, not just meeting a challenge because it's there and you feel obligated to do it, but defining a challenge and hitting it head on and growing as a result, instead of just constantly feel like you're pushing that rock up the hill only to watch it roll back down again at the end of the day. Yeah. I mean, so it isn't that the mark of like just terrific literature and writing. I've done this now with a couple of books, but like, just say Huck Finn, I'll read that once every 10 years. And the book is ostensibly the same book, but every time I read it, I get something different out of it, because I'm a different person and I see different things in it. Every time I approach it at a different point in my life. And it doesn't often happen with Star Trek with me, because I've seen every episode so many times. But it's amazing that I was watching that scene. You had a reaction to it. I had a reaction to it. It spoke to both of us directly in different ways about aspects of our life that we're now personally experiencing. And that, again, that's Star Trek. That's why it's so universal. That's why people love it so much, because the messages are widely translatable, but still somehow unique to everyone that watches it. And another thing that just sort of blew me away right in that first scene, aside from being right in this universe, aside from seeing this terrific ensemble cast, there's a message right there in Act 1 that'll knock your socks off. And yeah, I mean, wow.
Really good writing. And it's funny that we both saw something in it for the first time again after watching it so many times, but it makes me wonder if there's more in there that I haven't seen yet. I love that first scene. I love the message of that, and they revisit that later on after the picnic scene, I think, or during the picnic scene. This first scene, I think, was really good, because this is the first time I realized they were like laying the groundwork for the rest of the episode. They were kind of like basically telling you what the episode's going to be about and what they're going to do, and I never realized before viewing it this time.
Oh, really? Yeah. No, I noticed that like maybe my first viewing, that he talked about all the stuff, and then all of a sudden it comes to life later in the episode, which I think is a hallmark of good writing, especially if you think Telosians are reading Pike's mind. This is what's been on his mind, so we're going to put you into these situations because of that. So I thought that was always a neat synergy in the episode. I feel like I noticed it the first time, maybe the second time.
I think when I started watching the episode, it was just for funsies and for adventures. and for green animal women, slave women.
Yeah, green animal women are always an alluring, they bait that
Is,
trap, baby.
This is one of the few shots where it's very different for the original version and the new remastered version, because out of his quarters window was basically a green screen in the original version, because they had like lights behind a thing just to simulate something, because they didn't have the technology really or the money to put space behind them. But in the new version, you can see like a star field going behind his window. That's one of the big differences.
I saw a side by side comparison of that, I think, on Memory Alpha. So that's one of the few that I've picked up on, because I just saw it errantly.
The Starship shot, of course.
Yeah.
But that was interesting. But the reason I think I was talking about this before we went to the feedback, but the reason I like the original special effects versions better than the remastered version is if you watch the remastered version, right when it goes into the saucer section from top down and you see the bridge, there's like a CG person walking onto the turbo lift, like right out of Titanic, deck people. It's really bad. And every time I see it, I'm like, because they were doing a lot of like people replacement back then. And that's the only thing that doesn't really hold up to now. What was that, about 2005 they were doing that? Maybe 2009.
I think they said the remastered was 2009. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, but
we'd have to. I'm probably wrong on that.
People walking just don't look real, and even today, not really real yet. They're a lot closer though. Back then, it was more like Lego Star Wars or something.
I hadn't even noticed. Because I love that shot so much, where you see the ship and then they pan over the saucer section and zoom down into the dome of the bridge. I always found that to be a spectacular effect. And I think that, again, just scrolling down through Memory Alpha when I was researching for the episode, they said that shot was so difficult to do that it took up a lot of the budget just to do that one simple effect, what's relatively simple now, because they had to do a whole bunch of compositing over it. And it was like, they had to do, I think, like stop motion frame by frame. And
it shows the Enterprise from 3 different angles, and then it has to dissolve through the top of the dome. And I think it's just when they had to replace it with the newer version, just that transition, they had to rebuild like a second of footage, and that's where you get that CG person walking on a turbo lift.
So, I got you. Okay,
that's the one spot where it fell down. But the important part about this episode is the story. So I think, however you watch it, it's still just as good. Also, I think it explores like the ideas of captivity, slavery, things like that. What was your take on how they approach that?
I found that a little bit contradictory in this episode, because you have basically the conceit of the entire episode is that men should be free. Humanity can only thrive in adversity, with something to push against. If you are confined in a cage, even if it's a pleasant cage, you are going to wither away and die, because you're not facing life. You're not licking it head on. You're not doing that most Star Trek of things, which is striving for more, for better, for personal growth. Number one even says it at the very end. To build a race of humans to be slaves is wrong, and she's willing to frag them all with the overloaded phaser to prevent it from happening. Yet at the same time, one of Pike's most vivid fantasies is of being a slave trader, of being an Orion profiteer who is basically sex trafficking slave girls. So that to me that's the first time I noticed that was in this episode, that they had that weird juxtaposition, because they just keep hammering and hammering that captivity is wrong and it should be about self-determination. And yet he's got this entire fantasy about basically subjugating females. So there's even a line in that, I don't want to dwell on it, but it essentially says, anyway, you go back and watch the scene, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And it is just cringe.
Is it where One of the other, I guess, background actors in the fantasy says the Orion slave women actually enjoy being taken advantage of.
Yes. And I know you don't like to use this word on the air, but it's essentially a fantasy. So that to me, it punched me in the gut because I never really paid that much attention to it. But then when I'm juxtaposing it against basically what is the message of this episode, it was just like, how do you reconcile those two things?
Now, like looking back at the whole Star Trek universe after they've retconned it on Enterprise, does that change your opinion of it?
No, because Enterprise would just set out to retcon it. And Enterprise also set out to make it more of not a romp, not a comedy episode, but they tried to do a light take on it as camp. And then they had the ending where, the reveal is the women are in charge the entire time. Well, obviously they're not if you're trading in green animal women. I mean,
there's only so much repair work that can be done on that.
Yeah. How about you? Does it change the way you think of it?
I tend to think of it when I think of that in this context of it being consensual adults in some kind of sub and dom relationship to where they're all willing participants. If it was really like a slave trade of women, then it would really offend me. But I feel like maybe that's not what they were going for, and I could be totally wrong.
Well, I don't think that they were going for kink, though, on mainstream television.
With Gene,
the late
you don't
60s.
Know. With Gene, you don't know. I don't know.
I don't want to disparage Gene Roddenberry, but I think you're reaching too deeply. Yeah, you're reaching a little bit.
I'm being apologetic for it. I'm apologetic for it. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a valid way because I don't think in those terms. So I never even considered that. So thanks. I mean, that actually, if you want to have some kind of palliative thought that will help you get through that scene, then maybe you think of it in those terms of sub and dom and,
it could be because I'm just listening to the audiobooks for 50 Shades trilogy right now. So it's in my brain.
Sexy boy.
But I like romance novels, normally holiday themed romance novels, but there's only so many of them out, Christmas time. I'm an electrician, going to fix your wiring, that kind of thing. But for most of my life, I didn't examine things in that way. I just saw a hot green woman and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So what about that aspect of the episode, the hot green woman?
I mean, the aspect of the episode you're talking about is Susan Oliver.
Susan Oliver.
She to me she's like distractingly pretty. That's another thing that struck me about this. You have the characters that are basically like lived in looking, kind of like Boyce, right? Just this grizzled old character actor. You have the guys that were the crash survivors. But then you have Jeffrey Hunter and Susan Oliver, who are like matinee idol beautiful, both of them. And Susan Oliver especially is just like so pretty. She's distracting. And on top of it, she gave a fantastic performance. I mean, she gives us the single greatest scene in all of Star Trek. Can we do the Vina off? Let's do our Vina. That scene when she's running away on the Rigel 7 illusion and she's dressed as a princess and she turns around and she does this look and she goes like, all right. I can't do it. I mean, put up a scene. I'm sure there's a vid cap of that because I remember when I went to see this, they played the cage they used to do the digital ones in the theater.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe for the remastered version. Maybe that's when I first saw the remastered version. Was in the theater when they did like those special airings. And
was that in Sayville?
No, well, it was here on the island. I think I saw it in Farmingville or Farmingdale. Farmingdale had a theater that ran that stuff. But I was with my friend Howard, and he'd seen it. He's a Trekkie, but he's much more of a comic book Star Wars fan. And I said, just wait until this scene. This is the funniest thing that's ever happened on Star Trek. And I don't know if people heard me, but she turns around and she throws that look. She pulls that face, and the entire theater just started cracking up. To me, every time I see it, I laugh out loud. So, I mean, I thank Susan Oliver for that. And yeah,
I haven't seen that look until the next time I watch it.
I mean, you won't be able to unsee it, and you will thank me for it. Okay. So thank you. So
next time you watch CG guy entering the turbolift, next time I watch Susan Oliver,
you can watch her pulling that weird face. Yeah.
So I mean, was unbelievably gorgeous. Like, I don't think it's wrong to talk about it because, oh my God. But I guess that's one of the reasons why she was cast. Jeffrey Hunter was gorgeous as well. And those two together, it looked like it could be any top movie at the time. So that was good casting, I think. But it was the acting that was good too. You got to have both. You think that's why a lot of TV now falls down is because they're trying to hire models to be actors instead of just trying to hire a good actor?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that the paradigm has shifted to the point where you have to be pretty first and then act there second. Whereas back in that era, again, those Twilight Zone episodes, those workaday actors that just go in and get it done and do a phenomenal job, like the Boyces, like just about anybody that you saw on 60s television, quite frankly, 50s and 60s television. It wasn't I feel like the craft meant more than look, we grew up in the 70s where Walter Matthau could be a sex symbol. So it showed you that it was more about talent than appearance. Yeah. And as the 70s went into the 80s, that all morphed into we need all the prettiest people on the planet to do all these things. But that was old Hollywood too. You know, you had your matinee idols. So I feel like the pendulum always swings one way or another. I think with a lot of the prestige TV now and a lot of the limited series, you can get different people of different looks and different types, and TV permits it again. So
I don't think we'll get a John Hoyt type person on Stranger Worlds. I just don't think it's going to happen. They hire the pretty people first, but I think that's a lot to do with advertising and different multimedias. They want people to stop and look, and they're not going to stop and look at a bunch of old people, you know?
Yeah, no, I understand that. But if we're going to have a TV environment again, where talent can dictate on many levels what's going to be made, you think of like a Breaking Bad. Like Bryan Cranston is no matinee idol, but everybody loved that show because he's just phenomenal in it. Just if you want to stay with that, Better Call Saul. I mean, who ever thought that Bob Odenkirk would be, you know, this perennial now?
So sometimes talent outweighs looks.
Yeah. And so but it's nice when you got both. And Susan Oliver's got them both in spades.
She is definitely on my Mount Crushmore. Who is on your Mount Crushmore? And we can't include Laura because obviously I've met her. She would be on all four faces. But if you couldn't include her, like on your celebrity crush, who would be on your Mount Crushmore?
Oh my God, there are too many to list. I'm going to say Rachel Lee Cook.
Okay.
Rachel Lee Cook in the Josie and the Pussycats movie.
Oh,
she's on my Mount Crushmore.
Definitely.
Yeah. How's that?
That's only one.
Oh, I got to do four?
I think so.
Well, you go. So we have Susan Oliver.
Yep.
So what's your second one?
My four I thought about this because I heard about this just recently. I think obviously Meg Ryan, Jerry Ryan, Donna Reed.
Wow.
And Susan Oliver, I think.
Wow. I'd have to, you got to come back to me on this. I mean, you're
okay. I'll come back to you at the end.
Yeah, that's two. That's two. Now I'm going to be distracted and cogitating about beautiful women. Oh no.
How is that different than normal? I don't know. I have to give a lot of credit to Pike. If I was Pike, right, struggling with my current job, my day-to-day, and presented with the option of having a automatic wife in Susan Oliver in a picnic, painted green, I don't think I could fight it. But maybe that's why he's a starship captain and I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, she's okay. She's like, I can be anything you want. Anything. And that's when it gets like real. I mean, up until this
there's
point,
some lines that are racy in this.
yeah, that scene when she was the Orion, they're doing the dance, and that's supposed to be lascivious. You're supposed to be like, that's a leering moment. But then he leaves, he gets up and he leaves, and then he turns around and it's all gone. But then she comes up with that torch, and she just gives him that look. And she's like, I can be. At that moment, they cut away to the ship, and I'm thinking, is that TV shorthand for their now? Because
I thought that this time, first time.
Yes, the look between the two of them, the deal was sealed. Like, there was just no holding back on it anymore. And then they go back, and apparently not. But in my mind, they totally boned right when they cut away. So
Pike wasn't putting his boots back on. That was the clue back then.
They didn't pan up to fireworks. That was the clue.
Trains going through tunnels.
Right. The Enterprise going through a wormhole.
If they did, that's when they did.
Yeah.
Man,
yeah.
I'm trying to think. Who? Maybe. You know what I found weird about that scene? From the way they shot it, it looked like almost like Orion slave women were like larger than humans. If you watch it again, there's like different shots where they're like shooting up at Susan Oliver and down at Pike to kind of make it look like a difference. And you don't see him in a 2-shot really. It's just like reaction shots. So I found that interesting. Of course, they changed that if that's what they're going for later. What was it in the one that Lord Goth? Which one was that one? I forget.
That was Whom Gods Destroy.
Thank you. And you had the Orion woman.
The Orion woman in that was played by Batgirl.
Batgirl, yeah. Batgirl from Batgirl? 66.
Yeah, Batman 66, who I don't know why I'm blanking on her name.
You'll think of it. Just shout it out later.
Exactly. And they'll be in the comments below.
Yeah, that was done well. I think that was the one where they kept sending the film back developed in a weird color because they didn't know she was supposed to be green. They kept trying to make it her flesh tone again.
In terms of color correction?
Yeah.
I've heard. Yeah. I've heard that they used to do that with Spock because Spock's complexion was supposed to be like a dull sort of olive because of his green blood. And the techs at the studios, the TV stations running it would always try to color correct it because they thought he looked off. They thought he looked, sallow and sick. But no, he's supposed to.
Maybe I'm conflating the two stories. Yeah, that's true. It's weird back then. I guess they didn't have that instant communication and the options to go back and forth because they were actually literally color treated.
Yvonne Craig.
There you go. Oh yeah! Wow. Who's my favorite cat girl? Do you remember?
Halle Berry.
Nope.
The other one that nobody likes anymore.
No.
You know, Anne Hathaway. That's
Anne Hathaway. No, Eartha Kitt.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, she was the best.
Julie Newmar.
Julie Newmar. Oh, Julie Newmar was good too. Thanks for.
Now we're just naming cat girls.
Yeah, that's okay. How many cat girls can you name? Well, Halle Berry was a good cat girl, but Julie Newmar. Ooh. Anyway, so was this really like mind projection, or was it like a holodeck and a holodeck and a holodeck thing? How did you take it? I know they said projections in our mind.
Yeah, no, this to me was a complete head trip. He never left that cell. He was always in that cell. So it's not like, and it was funny. One of my favorite scenes in this, and I remember it being one of the most arresting scenes, was when they punish him for the first time. And he's basically like in a pit of acid with like that
oatmeal,
crappy oatmeal all over him. And the fire. And I found that to be a very effective scene the first time I saw it. And it's still one of my favorites. So it really conveys the horror that they can instill in you. And it kind of ties into another like thematic issue I have with this episode. But what did you think it was mind, or was it more of a holodeck thing? Or
there was a couple times where I thought, was this the first time we saw a holodeck? But so many things were individual. When we see Vina crawling through the hole in the glass of the cage of the menagerie, she still has her illusion even though the illusion is dropped of the glass. So it's like definitely in their minds, I think. The thing that stood out in my mind about that scene, that basically he was sent to hell, and it was the Telosian saying, "From a fable you once heard in your childhood," and I was like, right there, Gene Roddenberry, like telling everybody that theology is bullshit, basically, which I applaud, and I like that, especially back then. That might be one of the reasons why the network decided, give us a different episode, because that might have pissed off a lot of people back then. I don't know.
I loved that about this episode. And then another thing that I just noticed in this viewing, we're calling that a fable. And it's obviously an allusion to hell, which is obviously is exactly what you just said. Yet, multiple times in this episode, they invoke Adam and Eve. So which is it? Do we believe the fable, or do we not believe, or is it bullshit? Which one is it? Were there two first people, and we're going to compare ourselves to them? Or is it just ancient history or ancient myth, like ancient fairy tales?
I think Gene was smart enough to know that Adam and Eve wasn't true. But I think it was so steeped in the culture that it was the quickest shorthand for television, maybe. And so much of reality was religion taken at face value, that it was just part of the everyday vernacular.
I'll buy that. It struck me as odd when you are making what seems to me a bold choice about dissing a belief system that is prevalent in the culture in which you're going to present your entertainment at your own peril, might I add.
Yeah.
And then
that was a ballsy move.
All right, but then hewing to its conventions for plot convenience, for shorthand, so that it is maybe a vernacular thing. We have so many things in our vernacular now that have origins that are lost to time. So maybe that's a good way to think about it.
Well, we just referenced Sisyphus, but we don't really think there was a guy rolling a rock up a hill.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
You do?
The crows were eating his liver every night. Yeah.
It does happen.
That poor bastard. I cry about it all the time. Yeah. You're right. Now we did it just this one time. Yeah. So
shorthand for ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. I'll buy that.
I did find it strange. And I wondered if Adam and Eve was the adult video supply company even back then. And maybe that's why they were referencing.
Are they still around?
I don't know.
I think I hear them sometimes for podcast advertising.
Oh yeah,
I think they are still around. You
can order silicone things, and you can order DVDs. Still.
And they always say it comes in a plain brown wrapper. And I wouldn't know personally. I just hear these things on podcast feeds.
I don't know anything.
When are we going to get the fat Adam and Eve ad revenue coming in here? Come on, Adam and Eve. We'll do a live read for you.
Yeah, exactly. We'll take any sponsor at the moment except Vessi. No Vessi ads, but don't get me started on Vessi. One of the lines I remember being very sexy as a kid, and still, is when Susan Oliver says, "I have to wear something, don't I?"
Yeah. Another, like, woo,
wow.
Do you?
Wow.
And there's also the scene when she is in his cage and they start punishing her. And then he goes to like hold her, and then she disappears. So obviously she was an illusion or something, but there seems to be her clothes left on the bed. Yes. As if she was transported away. Or was that just a blanket that he was holding instead?
It looked like her clothes, right?
Right. It was very nebulous, but it did look like she lost the dress.
Yeah, like she was photons and force fields wearing an actual dress.
Yeah, right? So, that struck me as somewhat odd. I was wondering if you had noticed that too, but apparently you did.
Yeah, I'm not sure the logic of that. But knowing how she looks in actuality and how she's like in her 60s and all jacked up, which I want to talk about later. Don't let me forget.
No, I won't. That's an amazing part of the episode.
Just the sex in this episode, the sexiness of the episode is amazing. I think that has a lot to do with, Susan Oliver and Jeffrey Hunter, but just the lines, the writing, the directing, the look, it made me very horny as a kid.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, that's Susan Oliver too, because she goes from like wholesome wife figure during the Picnic with Tango to seductress to just this raw lust.
Mm-hmm.
And she pulls it all off believably. So again, it's kind of like, tell me this isn't male wish fulfillment where you have, she's a saint in the kitchen and
Vulcan in the streets, Klingon in the sheets, right?
yeah, something like that. But yeah.
Also, Gene was talking about in the intro on the VHS about before when Women's Live, he tried to give fully fleshed out female characters, and the network didn't like that. And I think it if you look at it another way, it's a woman taking control of her own sexuality and sensuality and wants, and not just for him, but she's got to be horny. She's been there for how long? 18 years.
18 years, yeah.
Without another human male, which she's male, so.
But if she can take advantage of the fantasy just like Pike can, and she's been there so long, I mean, maybe there has been a dalliance or two.
The picnic scene I really enjoyed because there's many things going on there. The one where Pike is back where he had just wished he could be for a while if he did choose the retirement life, and he's got his horse Tango, and Susan Oliver's sitting there. And I think that's where I would have given in. If I hadn't given in with the Orion woman, I probably would have given in at the picnic. Just take the easy way out and live that life. I found something weird that she said, and I wrote it down, is she made sandwiches from Pike's mom's recipe for chicken tuna. And I was like, what the hell is that in my note? What is chicken tuna?
Actually, I have WTF is chicken tuna. I mean,
I've never caught that before this viewing, ever.
Can you think of anything more disgusting than chicken tuna? I don't know. It just sounds vile.
Maybe that's what they called chicken salad back then? I'm not sure.
Or maybe it was like chicken of the sea. Like that's what they, because the tuna fish, there was a tuna fish called chicken of the sea. Maybe. I mean, so maybe, I don't know. Guys and gals and Treksplorers,
remember what it was called back then?
Send us your recipe for chicken tuna. And I want to see if it's as vile as it sounds. Ooh, chicken tuna.
I love chicken salad. I can't eat tuna salad. I ate it as a kid when I didn't know what it was, but when you're a kid, you eat what you're given, especially back then.
Oh, I like tuna fish much better than I like chicken salad. I like them both, but give me a tuna sandwich any day.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Chicken salad,
I love it.
I'm all the way. I love a chicken salad melt. Kind of like a tuna melt, but made with chicken salad.
I like a tuna melt. I like a Waldorf chicken salad sandwich.
Is that like got grapes and jelly in?
It's got grapes and stuff in it. Yeah, it actually makes the chicken. Yeah.
Have you had Arby's chicken salad? It's really good. It's got like craisins and grapes and walnuts. It's weird. It's pretty good.
Perkins? They're still
Arby's.
Arby's. Oh, Arby's. No, I've never been to Arby's, except for on the road. I think I've eaten Arby's twice in my life.
Oh, I can eat 5 of the regular roast beef. I used to get the Big Montana, which was like a pound of roast beef, and then I'd double it, so I'd get the 2 pounds of roast beef, and then I just drench it in that Arby's sauce, and then dip the curly fries in the horsey sauce, and go into a diabetic coma. It's great.
Yeah, the only time I think that the Arby's that I remember, it might have been only the one time we were driving cross country and we stopped at an Arby's, and I got this roast beef sandwich with what I thought was going to be like melted American cheese, and I was just looking so forward to it. But it was just that disgusting nacho cheese sauce, like
beef and cheddar,
over everything.
It was like the beef and cheddar.
It's like, what the hell, man?
You got to get the regular roast beef with the Arby's sauce. So good.
I'm going to go to Arby's when they put chicken tuna on the menu.
Chicken tuna. Yeah. So many things I caught, because normally I'm just watching to enjoy. But this, I'm kind of like hanging on every word, trying to think, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I was like, chicken tuna. Chicken tuna.
We should get some chicken tuna shirts.
We should get some chicken tuna. Okay.
Next. You were talking about how Roddenberry said that it's before women's live. He wanted to give women agency. Mm-hmm. It's a perfect segue to talk about Majel's role in this as number one, because there's one thing that I noticed in this episode that I hadn't noticed before. And maybe because we're now in the disco era, where there are so many more different types of characters in charge, in command, where you don't think about it as much. But when you think of the original Star Trek, you think of misogyny, you think of male hierarchy, you think of no women captains because of Turnabout Intruder. because women are hysterical. And of course they're not fit to lead because, they could fly off the handle at any time because of the phase of the moon.
Yeah.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
I loved the scene in the conference room when they're talking about the options of what they're going to do. And Spock is there giving his thing, and Tyler is there talking about it, and Boyce is there giving his 2 cents. And then at the very end, everybody turns to number one, and she just makes the call. And it's not like she's offering an opinion. It's not like she's contributing to the conversation, but honey, the men are talking. They look to her. She says, "This is what we're going to do." And everybody just gets up and does it. And I never really noticed that before in watching this. And I don't know now if it's because I'm more used to seeing females in leadership roles in Star Trek, thanks to New Trek, that this stood out to me as anachronistic for the TOS era. What did you think of that?
Anachronistic, but definitely intentional. I think
Yeah.
It's one thing I never noticed growing up because I grew up, 80s, 90s, where women superficially had equal rights anyway. But later on, after watching Star Trek a lot, I noticed that it was pretty, again, ballsy of Gene to put a woman in charge. And the way she did it, she wasn't a woman captain, but first in command. So when the captain was captured, she was in command, and there was no question about it. And like watching it today, it just seems normal. But you got to think back then, like I just mentioned, Donna Reed show, that was women on television back then. Lucille Ball, maybe.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's one of the reasons Lucy liked Star Trek pilots so much. No.
No. I've heard interviews with Herb Solov about Lucy's supposed involvement in her getting behind the show or whatever. And
tell me, dish to the dirt. You got some tea to spill?
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of things.
Okay.
Number one. This comes from an interview that my friend Rick did with Herb years ago. And they just reran it on that Star Trek podcast. I think it was that Star Trek podcast. And it was fascinating. He did it on his first show. I think it was called the Starbase 66. And
he interviewed Lucille Ball?
No, he interviewed Herb Solov.
Oh, okay.
And they asked him about that whole thing about Lucille Ball being behind it. And they had according to Solov, they had presented her with a couple of different pilots to read. And he came in and said, "What'd you think of the Star Trek pilot?" And she said, "Honestly, I got a few pages and I didn't understand a word of it. And you can, if you want to, you can just do it." But she wasn't as involved. She wasn't the backer that everybody has made her out to be since. She wasn't like beating the drum for it. She was just like, all right. And the other thing that that you hear quite frequently is that they had to recast because the suits were too uncomfortable with having a woman be second in command on a starship. Even when you have Pike saying, "I'm just not used to women on the bridge."
Yeah, that doesn't add
but
up.
Not you, number one.
You're different.
You're different, right? You have steel ovaries, not like these hysterical women over here. From what Solov says, and he said this in his book too, I think, it wasn't that the network had an issue with there being a female as second in command. Their issue was they didn't think that Majel could carry the role. They didn't think that she was dynamic enough to keep that on her shoulders and sustain it. So I don't know where the truth lies in that, but I just think it's really amazing that the very first thing that we've ever seen called Star Trek featured one woman prominently in a position of power and having a place on that bridge. That's as important as having Nichelle there, as having George there, as having all of the representation. To have that woman calling the shots and nobody questioning it, except for the captain in one weird anachronistic line, is amazing to me.
It is amazing. And maybe that's why they went with the second pilot and waited till 88 to air this because they just weren't ready for it yet. I could see them thinking that from the first couple scenes with Majel in it when she's, in Sulu's position. What would that be? Like Nav or something? She seems very depressed and not wanting to be there. And she's like, okay, whatever you say, But when it gets to be she's in the conference room scene, she's down on the planet trying to blow the top off of that mountain. She's great. She's absolutely great. But those first couple of scenes, so if someone who maybe watched the first 15 minutes of the pilot to make their decision, I could see them deciding that, because that was weird for me. She seemed kind of depressed almost, or like not wanting to be there.
I didn't pick that up. She seemed to be much more stoic, and this will dovetail into our discussion Spock too. But I feel like when you see Majel acting as Laxwana in the 90s Trek, and just how ebullient she is and how fantastic she is whenever she gets on screen, everything becomes a lot more fun.
Yes.
And then you juxtapose that to the stuff she did as Chapel. Chapel had not a lot to do. Sometimes she had a couple of moments in the series, but on the whole, if I don't know if it was Majel or the material, but it just didn't work most of the time. She just wasn't a presence on screen. But then you go back to the Cage, and she's so much more compelling and so much more watchable. And for them to say, I don't know if this one can carry a role like that, not that we're adverse to the idea of the role, but just not this actor.
It makes you wonder.
That makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me.
But wasn't Gene dating her at the time as well? So maybe that was the way he explained it to her. Instead of like, they don't like you, it was more like he had to say, they don't like women on the bridge. That might.
Yeah. But I mean, you also got to realize that, a lot of the stories that come down from Roddenberry were just blatant lies. A lot of apocrypha, a lot of him, as David Gerald so wisely said in interviews that I've heard, it got to a point where Gene began to believe his own press, and he went from being Gene Roddenberry to being the great bird of the galaxy. So he became so iconic that he had to be rebellious against anything that happened wrong was the network's fault. It couldn't be Gene because he was the visionary. Right down to the thing where he put 2 belly buttons on one because they wouldn't let him show belly buttons on Star Trek or something like that. We saw belly buttons on Star Trek. That's bullshit. There are even people that said I was the censor of the network back then. We had no problem. I
don't think it's just a Gene Roddenberry thing. I think it's a history thing in general. So much history is just inaccurate, and it's more of what's the best story, and that's what ends up being retold over and over again.
Yeah, but I think that's a completely Gene Roddenberry is the one crafting those stories to me, because he becomes more and more self-aggrandizing as the years go on.
In the intro for the black and white color version of the Cage, he says that number one Majel was portraying a person with a computer brain. So maybe that's why he was directing them to go that way, with her being so emotionless, maybe towards the beginning. He also mentioned that in the, I think he called it sensible casting. The network wanted it sensibly cast, which meant all white. That was their version for all white. But
I never heard that before.
Yeah, it's interesting if you check that video out where he talks about it. It's like him going around in '86 in the Next Generation almost sets. They're like past the movies, but not quite to the Next Generation yet.
Gotcha.
But I find like the overall writing of the episode's great. I find things like that interesting, and I'm sad that it didn't continue. And I have my own headcanon about women on the bridge. Since, he's dating a starship captain, that's a woman. I think he might have went through a previous mission to where maybe his brain got messed up to where it was a different situation where women weren't on the bridge anymore. And he was like maybe interlighted for a while, and we don't know what happened. And he's just not used to women again yet.
Yeah. I feel
right around the turtles.
Yeah, from the guy who wanted to make his bones as a writer fixing errors in continuity like that. I feel no obligation to try to reconcile the two mindsets because it's irreconcilable when you think about it. It just that was the society back then. This is the society now. What I love is that what they've done is taken the best of all these ideals and carried them forward and left the misogyny and the worst of the ideals on the trash heap of history where they belong. Or is it the ash heap of history? Whatever the saying is. But
the great trash heap has spoken. Froggle Rock.
Oh, okay.
might be a way of just calling out that women are equal now. It might be a way of saying it on the pilot, on the episode, women are equal now, but I'm still not used to it. Because maybe they just got to the point in the future where women were equal. They were thinking a couple hundred years, maybe they'll be equal.
Yeah, but then you watch Strange New Worlds and all that's out the window.
Out the window, so.
So, I mean, there's a female captain when if you read into the Turnabout Intruder.
I don't know how we
to be captains.
I don't know how we rationalize that.
We don't. Again, that's what I'm saying. You can give yourself an injury trying to do it. So, one book that I read before any of the new Trek stuff came out tried to reconcile that by saying after the Third World War, women became a precious commodity in the sense that they were necessary to repopulate the species. So they were put into protective whatever. Basically, the pendulum swung the other way because women were so important to the survival of the human race that they were protected and not expected to be in positions of danger. They were expected to be in a home or, more domestic capacity because they were needed in that capacity more than they were needed. Again, it's trying to put lipstick on a pig. There's really no reconciling it because it's just a wrong idea. So you're just stuck with it. And you can choose to dwell on it, or you can choose to say, okay, well, that's a product of its time. Then there's still amazing stuff to be seen in this episode, amazing messages to be found. Why don't we focus on that and how groundbreaking a lot of this was as well? That's how I do it in my head.
I think it's how I heard about like racism is like a lot of racists don't know they're racist, just like a lot of fish don't know that they're wet. It's when you grow up in an environment, you don't know specifically the things you're saying that would hurt others because that's everyone in your environment uses that vernacular, let's say. So that might be one of the things that's a product of this being filmed in the 60s, that they were just saying things that they didn't realize made no sense, maybe, to what they were trying to convey about the future.
Okay.
But Turnabout Intruder, I think every Star Trek series gets one episode that you can say didn't happen. So we'll go Turnabout Intruder. We can say Tuvix, Next Gen. I'll save it for when we get there. Deep Space Nine.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know, man. I mean, I love Turnabout Intruder. I think that Shatner's overacting on Turnabout Intruder is the stuff of legends.
But the whole conceit of she can't be a starship captain because she's a woman. Now, she's the only one that says that, right? Or does somebody else say that?
Yeah, I think that she says that. I don't know.
It might just be her crazy. Right?
In Turnabout Intruder, she might have read the situation like that. Maybe she is unfit for command.
Yeah.
And she's just choosing to blame the entire Federation and the boys club for the fact that she can't be a captain.
And using the gender card when it wasn't even a factor.
Right. I don't recall her saying straight out that females aren't allowed to be captains in Starfleet. It was intimated. It was intimated. I don't know. When we get there, we'll get there. We'll get there in 79 episodes.
So what else does this is this episode about? What else you want to talk about? There's so much in this episode. It's crazy. I want to say that it's Rennie's favorite episode of TOS so far.
How many has she seen?
Most of the way through first season, I'd say.
Okay. All right. Yeah. First season's the best season. So,
yeah, I think so. But yeah, she watches. She'll choose the cage every time if she gets a chance.
Well, I mean, I feel like this is part of the episode message that we got in the first act. But Venus talking about the Telosians, and she's saying that the their mind powers, their mental powers became a trap. And I wrote down the quote, like a narcotic, because when dreams become more important than reality, you give up travel, building, creating. Once again, we're not meant for complacency. We are meant to strive. We are meant to grow. We are meant to build and create and travel and discover and explore. And that is our, our first best destiny as a species, to conquer the stars and to go out there and learn everything we can. So I liked that they. Maybe it's the narcotic thing. Maybe it is just like you can get too into things that give you an easy high, right? Easy pleasure. They get high on your vibe, man, and they can't kick you.
And they
You
grok
know?
talk. I think
Yeah.
he's almost calling out at the time, maybe uh people watching too much television,
I
but
think he's
right
calling out.
now
No, he's
I
calling
see
out those
him
filthy hippies. He's
I,
calling out those filthy
I see
hippies.
him calling out like present day for us, where people are at home binging Netflix instead of going out and living their own lives, or spending all their times on their phones instead of looking up. They'll be watching their phone recording a concert instead of watching the concert. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, but you can extrapolate that idea to any time, to any generation, to any vice that is more escapism than constructive.
Mm,
So to me, that's a very 20th century ideal where, you have to get things done. You always
mhm,
have to be in a state of productivity
mm,
as opposed to being in a state of maybe self-care or a
mm.
state of just enjoyment,
Yeah.
right? I mean, nothing's worthwhile unless you work for it. That's a very Star Trek thing as well, because everything's a meritocracy on a starship. So
Mhm.
of course you're going to have a bunch of workaholics that think that, travel, building, creating, learning, striving is the pinnacle, because that's why you were there. That's, you wouldn't be there if you didn't feel that way. See also Jake Sisko.
Mhm.
Just like,
It,
nah, what are you doing? What do you want? Why would you want to do this? Yeah.
in my younger days, I think I had that mindset. I needed to get to where I needed to be. Now I'm more of like, the reason we're here is just to enjoy, have fun, and experience. And if I spend my life working for something that I'm never going to achieve, I'm going to miss experiencing what the world has to offer. So right now I'm in the phase of enjoying what the world has to offer.
So am I. You were just talking about turning your back on it, though. So
Yes.
maybe you
Uh,
don't. Maybe you just find those more things for
in
the world
in
to
in
offer.
half of my life, my half is very bifurcated, to where when I have my daughter, I want to have her the world be her oyster and experience everything. To go to the statue, go to New Hampshire, take flights, take cruises, go on adventures, go on day trips, to go to the zoo, feed a giraffe. But for me myself, when I live that half of the life that I have, it's just about sitting and enjoying something and not working
Okay.
towards anything.
All right. Well, maybe you pepper in a balance there.
Maybe.
You know,
So maybe I'm doing all
is
right.
yeah. Well, I mean, I look at it this way. In that sense, for me, at this point in my life, it's not about stuff. It's not about gain. It's about experiences, because you only
Mhm.
have so much time on this planet, and you can either spend it worrying about stuff that you can't control anyway. You can spend it trying to build up a sense of security, which is most likely false, because things can just go south at any moment. Or you
Yep.
can spend it doing the things that pique your interest, that give you
Mhm.
joy, that give you experiences that you will treasure, instead of just one more thing that you're going to put on a shelf and be tired of. I mean, I always think of the Pink Floyd song. I think it's Time. It could be another. It's on Dark Side of the Moon, but the line is, "All you touch and all you see is all your life will ever be."
Mm.
So it's breathe. It's breathe. It's not time. It's breathe. But that, to me, that's profound, because it's just so simple and it's just so true. So, and I feel like that's a very Trek ideal. Like, go out, explore, learn. You know, even if you joined Starfleet because you wanted to study moss, go out and study all the moss you can, you know?
Yeah. We talked about all the great things about this episode. Was there anything in this episode, The Cage, that like bumped you a little bit?
Well, I mean, besides the human trafficking.
Yeah.
And the fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, those really bumped me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Smiling Spock.
But I like how Strange New Worlds kind of retcon that for us to where sometimes he does have emotions and sometimes he's all in and he goes back and forth. So I like that. I think the biggest thing that bumped me about the storytelling in this episode is that where they try to do Twilight Zone-esque ending, where like, okay, this means this means that, this means that, and you didn't see it before, is to where I think Vina says they had never seen a human. They had no guide to putting me back together. And then you look 3 feet to your left, and the Telosians are humans with just butt heads.
Yeah.
Like, and they put her back together like this, you know? What?
I love it. She got like that hump.
Yeah. It makes no sense.
But I got to tell you, I remember the first time I saw that scene when they revealed the true Vina, and I was blown away by it. I thought that was a fantastic ending. And for even the Telosians to realize, look, you have to understand that she sincerely wants to stay here. And I guess it's as good a reason as any. And also, number one says to her, there was a Vina on the Columbus, but she was an adult crew member. She wasn't just born when this thing. So that's
plus 18 years.
Yeah, so plus 18 years. So
50 maybe 45, which back then was.
Yeah, 45 was the 60 back then.
Yeah, with 60 back then, although the 45-year-olds played the teenagers in the movies back then. So
that's true. In the 80s they did too. Yeah. I don't think that didn't bump me. I thinking on it, yes, of course. Like, you've seen a basic humanoid because you are a basic humanoid. But I don't know, maybe the Telosians don't look like that at all. Maybe that's an illusion.
Exactly. Maybe that's an illusion for Pike.
Maybe they like those little fuzzy things in Cat's Paw.
Maybe they're
dance around at the end.
Maybe they're guys in gorilla suits or backwards bird people.
Right. You know, it's funny that number one is the one that cottons to that, because one of the other things that I had found in the course of researching this is why Spock's betrayal is so different. And he's Smiley Spock in this. They actually posited that, as you said, number one is more like a computer brain. She was going to be more stoic, more analytical, more drier as a character. And Leonard felt that he could play off of that with a little bit more emotion, a little bit more exuberance, so that there would be a contrast between the characters. And then when they recast everything, Spock got that role instead. And that's when we get Leonard doing that amazing Vulcan interpretation and just creating an entire race with the arch of an eyebrow, you know? So I can't do that.
I wanted to be Spock when I was a kid, so I practiced a lot. Did a lot of this. Walk around like this. Wonder why I didn't get a girlfriend for a while. There's many apocryphal things about this episode that I've heard and believed for a lot of my life, because back when I was getting into Star Trek, you didn't have the internet. So basically what you heard from people at conventions or Star Trek clubs, that was what happened. So for most of my life, I believed Leonard Nimoy is limping in this episode because he had hurt himself during filming of something else, and they just went with it, and you weren't supposed to notice it. But now in something you sent me today, I find out that's totally untrue. I was today years old when I found out that wasn't true.
Well, here's another thing about, again, the rewatch. I was today years old when I realized that Leonard was limping when they first got down to Talos. I'd never noticed it before.
Wow.
And then I noticed it, and I said to myself, Jesus, I wonder why he's limping. I bet Albie knows. And then you asked me about it.
And then you researched it. Luckily, we got a research department.
Yeah. So they've been asking the question for years, obviously. And I got this from Quora, and I'm going to quote Quora because it's my wife's favorite site on the internet. She goes to Quora all the time.
She's real, by the way.
Yeah.
100% real.
And I'm just quoting someone. I didn't even take their name, but I'm going to read verbatim what they said. It has been suggested that Leonard Nimoy might have been hurt during the production, but that turned out to be untrue. Apparently, Gene Roddenberry told him to limp. There was never any explanation other than that. There was a reference to a mission in the pilot that the Enterprise had at Rigel 7, in which many crew members were on an away mission with Captain Pike, and Spock was apparently injured on that mission. And again, Pike is moaning about that mission throughout the entire first act. These people got killed. These people got hurt. We almost didn't get back with our lives. It's such a seminal moment in his character that they went back to it for probably the worst episode of Strange New Worlds when they go back to Rigel 7. So I can buy that Spock was on that landing party, not away team landing party, and got injured. That's fine.
And it kind of fits in. When you told me that, I was like connecting dots in my head. I was like, oh, okay, because the one ensign on the bridge that's in the like Chekhov spot normally, I forget what his name
That's
is.
Jose Tyler.
Tyler? Okay, he was wearing like an ace bandage around his wrist. Okay. And the guy that comes in to give Pike the report before they go down the Talos 4, he's got like this big bandage on his neck.
I didn't notice the bandage.
First time I noticed it was in this episode. I would always notice the ace bandage, but never the bandage.
So maybe
on
he
neck.
is security. So maybe Tyler went down because he's, part of the bridge crew, like you do. It'd be like Chekhov going down. And the guy who handed thing, he had that weird C on his Delta.
So we were looking at different parts. But if you go back
at
and
different
look again,
security, yeah,
wearing a bandage on his neck, and I had never seen it before. But it's not pointed out. There's no close up or shot of it. You have to actually look, and it's just from the front, but you see it on the side. And I was like, wow. So it's interesting that maybe even then they were thinking about the backstory and maybe revisiting that later or something. But they definitely didn't have any woo 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 blue light to fix everything back then. You just put a bandage on it and you walked it off.
And you had a martini.
And you had a martini.
Doctor's orders.
So maybe the pendulum swings back the other way, where no blue light and just martinis.
Yes. I mean, listen. I mean, what more do you need?
There is so much to discover in this episode, watching it so many times.
I mean, yeah, I think we can go on and on and on. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
On and on and on and on.
I loved the aliens too that were also in the menagerie with him, and I tried my best to see if those were retconned into any existing Star Trek species. Are they Regilians? Are they whatever? And no, it's just anthropoid ape and humanoid bird, and they were apparently played by the same stuntman.
Okay.
In different costumes. And the other thing that I found out, maybe this is why I referenced Outer Limits earlier, even though it was apropos. They used the ape costume in Outer Limits before they did in Star Trek, and they just reused it in Star Trek. And the bird costume showed up in a later episode of the Outer Limits because the designer and the stuntman worked on both shows.
Oh, cool. Like, I got this bird costume.
And the bird costume shows up in Trelane's mansion in the third season as well, but it's like stuffed. Yeah.
Okay. Didn't make it. Oh, well. Sad face.
Nope.
Yeah. Why couldn't they rebuild the species and the planet with bird people or monkey people?
I guess because you need humanity, because humanity is, it's the end all be all for the galaxy. So
pilot in what was it? 66, right? Originally, probably.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing makeup, and it holds up in HD. The Telosians with the butt heads and the veins in their head. And
that blue veins. You can kind of see the latex a little bit, but
yeah, I think they did amazing for that, and especially when she's revealed who she really is.
Yeah. I thought it was terrific effects. I mean, I know that some of the match dissolves were not exact, but it gave you the sense of what they were going for, and just that wavy effect when they disappear, I think added so much to it. So that's another thing I'm thinking when you're seeing this on a TV in 1966 or whatever, although you wouldn't have been, I guess they didn't show it till 88. How much would that have blown you away? Yeah. I guess that kind of ruins my whole soliloquy at the top of the thing about how people at the time might have seen it and reacted to it because they didn't have a chance to see it and react to it.
Sad,
which is a shame.
You think with budget and stuff they would have thrown it in there, but I guess that's why they used most of it for the Menagerie 1 and 2.
Yeah, oh yeah, Gene has said that. Yeah, they didn't want to waste that footage.
Yeah,
so what
it was
the hell?
so good. It's. I'm glad that it was found somewhere. Now I had heard, again, probably not true, because that it was found in some private collector's vault. But when I rewatched the '88 special hosted by Patrick Stewart, he says found in a Paramount vault. So I don't even know the true history on that. It'd be interesting to find out if anybody knows. But I'm glad they found it. If that's all we had of that amazing episode, the black and white, like, it'd still be good. I'd still watch it, but I'd be sad.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they found it.
As am I. So
what do we got to do before we do the things we do?
The things we do. Well, I mean, we don't have any interviews.
Okay. Not yet.
Who's your episode crush?
We might have one coming up. Oh, Susan Oliver, 100%.
Duh.
Susan Oliver. I mean, I think I definitely watched this before fourth grade. I know, probably from the Menagerie, seeing Susan Oliver in the Menagerie, because that's what was out at the time. But in the fourth grade, there was a girl in my class. Her name was Sherry, and she came. It was back then. You used to dress up for Halloween. So I forget what I was that year, but she came as the Orion slave woman. And I was like, because that's like every man's dream. So every just pubescent male who, drooled over Susan Oliver green, and you're one of the hottest chicks in class, paints herself green and wears like a fishnet.
Nice.
Dude, it was a good memory. So I had a fond friendship with her for the rest of the time. So that was my first spotting of a green Orion woman in real life.
I still haven't seen one in real life.
Yeah, that's always the test. I mean, you ask your partner to either dress like Princess Leia or a green slave woman. So, and it shows their level of fondness for you.
What does that say that both of those fantasies involve women that are slaves? Because they call it Slave Leia. That's the one that they want when she's Jabba's slave. So, yeah, we have as
long as Leia's holding her own chain, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe because I look like Jabba the Hutt. I don't know.
We're becoming hashtag problematic, I think.
We are. We're saying the parts we think out loud. Maybe we shouldn't, but in this case, it's apropos, I believe. My episode crush, Susan Oliver. What about you, sir?
Oh, I mean, Susan Oliver, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, just those blue eyes and that blonde hair and just just everything about her is spectacular.
I've said it many times, but she'll make me watch an episode of the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah. Yep.
Whatever she's in, I watch it. Wow. If she wasn't in it, man, I got another crush, Majel. Majel is confident, strong, intelligent, powerful, and hot in this episode. Majel, if I could pick two. But of course, I want the cardboard stand-up of Vina.
Vina all the way.
All the way. Okay.
Vina.
What was your favorite part of the episode?
My favorite part of the episode was the message and the production value. And the writing, and just it's all part and parcel of the same thing. I mean, my favorite part of the episode is the episode.
I'm going to go with you there too.
Is that a cop out?
No, not at all, because I know exactly what you mean, because that's all I could come up with. The everything about the episode itself, that it exists. And much credit to Gene Roddenberry, because Gene Roddenberry sometimes has wild ideas that don't work out. But this one was spot on. And I think it stands the test of time for the most part.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And did you spot the 47?
There was not one in this. Did you?
Oh, there was. Yeah,
what?
It was the 47 times throughout the course of the episode where I said, wow, Susan Oliver's pretty.
She is.
I think it's time for you to ask me trivia questions, because I did it during the battle. I asked you trivia
If you haven't checked out that show, check that out. I was a little bit under the weather, so it's a little bit slower than normal, but I think we had some good discussions. Now, we had mentioned we had opened the same pack before.
I think we did, yeah. So you're going to
open the other pack.
All
and
right.
see
for
if
those
our
of you
is
See,
correct.
for those of you listening while Albie does this on the podcast feed, we have the Seen It cards from this game, this VHS game or DVD game, and they have 2 packs of trivia cards wrapped, and I opened one and Albie opened one, and we keep getting the same cards with the same questions. And the other thing, yeah, you're taking out like a box cutter to open. These are wrapped so well. I could not get it open when I was trying to do it when we were first doing it. So
maybe that's why. Maybe that's why we opened the other pack. It was easier. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. But we just keep drawing the same questions over and over again. It's like, oh, nope, I asked you that one. Nope, I asked you that one. We've done this, exactly 6 times? We're like getting all the same cards.
I got you for 3 questions. 3.
You got me for 3 questions.
I'm a referee on my day off. I can do this. 3 questions.
You are the rainmaker.
I'm the weatherman.
The weatherman.
The rainmaker, I managed him for a while. Didn't work out, but thunder and storm worked out. Okay. Cool. What warrior race made their first appearance in the original series episode Errand of Mercy?
Could it be the Klingons on planet Organia?
That is correct, sir. In the motion picture Star Trek Generations, what happens within the Nexus? A lot.
It's like Disneyland, where all your dreams come true.
I'd say you nailed it. It says reality appears to reshape itself in fulfillment of a person's innermost wishes. So, yes.
I think I said it much more succinctly.
Yeah, you did. I like your version better. Okay, question number 3. Are you ready? Play along at home.
Yes, Papa. I want to spend Christmas with you, Papa.
Papa. I want to ride horses.
I love it.
I want to ride horses and put dill in my scrambled eggs. Okay.
That's right. Oh, I got some dill today at the farm.
Are you going to put it in your scrambled eggs?
It's really yes, I'm going to make scrambled eggs tomorrow and put dill in it.
I like salt, pepper, dill, ton of butter. That might be what I have when I get out of here. Okay.
Give me a question.
Question number 3. Which of the following directors did not direct 2 Star Trek films? 2 Star Trek films. Leonard Nimoy, Nicholas Meyer, William Shatner, or Jonathan Frakes?
William Shatner only did the one.
Only did number 5.
Number 5.
You couldn't get rock creatures, so the whole thing was ruined.
That's right. I mean, that was the biggest problem with that film.
William Shatner. Okay, 3 for 3, my friend. You did it.
Do I get some marshmallows for that?
Marshmallows, exactly, 100%. Mm-hmm. All right, so that was new questions. You nailed it.
All right.
3 out of 3. Very good, my friend.
All right. Who's got a Trek and Tell?
Ooh, I got something appropriate for this episode, maybe. Now, I did want the Star Trek cardboard cutout of Vina. I saw it in a comic book shop in Orlando, but it was like sun bleached because it was in the front window. So it's like, I can't buy a sun bleached one, but I never got the opportunity to buy another one. So that day I got my Slave Leia cardboard stand up that I had for the longest time. Yeah.
We really are hashtag Treklematic.
Yeah, Treklematic. Mm-hmm. I can't help it. Boom, 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 boom. But I got this that same day.
What is that? This is a Star Trek action figure, it looks like, and it's a little blurry on my. That's the Orion Slave Girl. There we go.
Yes, and they call her Animal Woman because probably Slave Girl is problematic for the toys.
Yeah, so Green Animal Woman is so much more palatable. Yeah.
Yes, but this action figure made me wish I had an enlarging ray.
You need the Embiggenator?
Yep, for more than one reason. But yeah, that is one of my prized possessions.
That's awesome. Are you going to open that so you can see what the number is on the bottom of the foot?
Heck no, you can see from the bottom. You can see.
All right. Well, you know me.
While you pull out your Trek and Tell, I'm going to look at her feet.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I now have I got some new reading glasses since cool. I opened that thing. I might be able to tell you what the
Are you allergic as well?
Number is.
Are you allergic as well?
Yes, I am. I have two prescriptions now.
From the original Star Trek TV series, Talus for accessories, torch, fountain, bonus 30th anniversary action base. Nice. She comes with a fountain and a torch.
A fountain? I guess because she dances around the fountain, right?
She dances around the fountain. So if you kids want to play Slave Girl at home, Torch. But yeah, I love this. It hangs on my wall forever. I think this got smoke damage, but it was in a protective case.
All right.
So like I just took the smoke damage case off and she's still fine. So
Good.
it must have been before 2000 I got it. I don't know the math on that. Somebody correct me. Do we have a statistician yet on our volunteer staff?
I don't know. I'm still trying to look at the serial number on the bottom of Ensign Lynch's foot here. I just
like you did to Ensign Lynch.
It looks like it's 879. It's so tiny.
876
8675 3099.
So I was sad because I was looking for my season 1 on Blu-ray today to watch the episodes. Couldn't find it. It's probably misaligned in my shelf. But then I remembered, wait, I think it's on season 3. So I'm glad I remembered that and was able to watch it.
Neato. Well, I have a very Pike-specific Trek and Cell.
Love Pike.
And
love Pike's Peak.
It was way back in the Star Trek novel series, but not too far back. As the series had gotten really established, they were doing a whole bunch of different kinds of things, I guess because the books were selling like crazy. So they just kept on coming up with different concepts to do. And one of them was a captain's table, like we do the captain's round table.
That's where I started.
Yeah, it was essentially like the conceit of the novel was this space bar where time had no meaning. Ooh. So any captain from any era of Star Trek could come in and tell a story of one of their adventures. And they had 6 of them. I believe there were 6. Yeah, book 6 of 6. And the 6th one is the one I was looking forward to most because it was a Captain Pike story. Wow. It was a story called Where Sea Meets Sky, Christopher Pike. And I have all the Captain's Tables books, but because at that time I was thinking I want to be a writer and I want to do all of the earliest stuff in Trek. All those weird apocryphal things and how do we put it all together? So I was thinking, how are they going to do it? What are we going to see here? So I was so excited to see this. Now I look at this cover and this is not the greatest painting of Jeffrey Hunter.
It looks like a young Jeffrey Hunter.
It looks like frat boy Jeffrey Hunter, but
it
ain't
Starfleet
great.
Academy Jeffrey Hunter, 8472 in the flesh Jeffrey Hunter.
I'm telling you, I was kind of disappointed in this book.
Did they make an Archer book? Was there an Archer book? When did those come out?
Oh no, this is way before Archer.
This is
6 of 6. This is 6 of 6, and it came out in 98. 98. So there was no Archer in 98.
That was 2002, I think.
Yeah, I think this probably
started filming in 2001, premiered in 2001.
Yeah, it premiered in 2001. I've had this discussion before on other shows. So. First season of Enterprise was 2001.
What's your favorite book in the series, Captain's Table?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't remember any of the stories. I just remember looking forward to this one the most and being the most disappointed by it. This was also at a time now, like 98. I wasn't buying the books regularly anymore, but when they had like series like this that I found as an interesting concept, I would pick them up. I got to be honest, I don't even remember if I have all the Captain's Tables books. Even if I said I just did, as I'm looking at this and I'm remembering it in context, 1998, I was hitting 30. I wasn't buying Star Trek books on the reg anymore. So, yeah. Anyway.
I think pocketbooks really missed out on the subscription model because it didn't really exist as much back then. They had the Star Trek collector's edition VHSs back then. I don't know if you saw our friend Allison Pregler's Code of Honor video yet, but she uses
no.
Allison uses that collector's edition VHS video, for $29.95. You can YouTube.
Oh yeah,
So because there's one guy in the commercial that goes, "My favorite episode is Code of Honor." so she runs out a bunch. And but they had a subscription model, and I think I would have had the subscription to the pocketbooks of Star Trek if they did, and they would have sold a lot more. Because one thing I've noticed, because I'm looking to complete my collection of the collector's edition VHSs, and like when I see these auctions of entire series or seasons of them, it's like 80% not opened, 70% not open, most not opened. So people were paying for these $29 a month, receiving them, not canceling, keeping them, but not opening them because Star Trek, I guess.
I would not have joined that club. And I'll tell you why. Another reason I have such fond memories of the Star Trek books is they're the things that made me go out to bookstores. When I first started buying my own books, not going to the library, but going out and buying my own books, I was specifically trying to find all of the earliest pocket books of the Star Trek series because I started collecting them late, obviously. They were coming out way before I was able to go and do it myself. But there was a bookstore in Smithtown that carried an okay science fiction section,
Diane
but they would they would help me look for titles that I just couldn't find anywhere else. And it was the first time I ever went to a bookstore with something in mind and spoke to the proprietor and them saying, yeah, I'll keep a lookout for that. Again, this is pre-internet. So they had their sources, they had their networks, however they did it. And these people got me these books. I don't know where, maybe they just went to another store I didn't know about down the street, but I would come, they would say, we got the Trellisane, whatever. I think that's one. Anyway, I'll show, maybe that'll be another one, but that was one I was looking for the longest time, and they finally got it. And I was so happy, so I don't think it would have been the same formative experience for me if I just got one in the mail every day. And just, I brought down, I brought down Enterprise, the first adventure. This was the first giant one. Pike also features prominently in the beginning of this book because it's when he leaves command of the Enterprise and hands it over to Kirk. And they present him as a somewhat morose figure in this book, if I recall correctly, because he doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to give it up. So another Pike in Star Trek fiction.
Heard the audiobook many times. Many times.
Yeah.
I've never read the book, but I've heard the audiobook many times, which unfortunately is abridged. So, but I know the gist.
And I knocked down my little Kirk. It's an avalanche. Okay.
You broke your little ships.
I did. Anyway, for people cool. Listening on the podcast feed, I reached over my shoulder and I created a disaster.
But that's worth reading. At least I remember having fond memories of the audiobook. Listened many times. That's one I own somewhere. So a few final questions for you, Chris, before we go to our final thoughts and ratings. One, who is your favorite Pike? There's been 3 or 4. Three?
Oh, Jeffrey Hunter. Oh my God. Hands down. Hands down. Just the gravitas that he brings to it. I do like Anson Mount. I think Anson Mount's really good. Yeah, he's fantastic. I mean, there's no, but Anson Mount's a little too much like the space dad. And the way they write Pike on that show, he's too friendly. He's too, he wants to be everybody's mentor and example.
I have a theory about that.
But I feel like the Jeffrey Hunter's Pike is much more of a captain and somewhat aloof because you have to be, all these people are my best friends. Oh, I have to send you to die now.
That's true.
So I know that they want the new Trek, especially Strange New Worlds, to capture that big happy starship family vibe that you eventually got in a lot of the 90s Trek. But I don't know that it has its place, quite frankly, especially in pre-TNG era, rough and ready Federation, when things are a lot more frontier.
I think Anson Mount, now that he knows his death, or not death, but his disablement is coming imminently, I think he's thinking of, instead of living his life, it's more of the legacy I'm going to leave behind with these people. Like he's building memories for these people of himself. And so that might change his, who he is. But yeah, it's Jeffrey Hunter is really good, but Anson Mount, I will follow anywhere.
Okay, so Bruce Greenwood can go screw off then. Is what
Basically,
we're saying.
yeah, he was a non-character, I think, in the movies. Couple things that I didn't talk about yet. Cleanup. I think I saw a toilet in Pike's cage in the back corner. There seems to be some kind of rock chair with moss on it. I think they gave him something to pee on in the corner. If you watch it again, tell me if I'm right or wrong on that.
Well, Well, that'll be the special edition.
Okay. And one other thing, I don't know about. I didn't notice this in the remastered editions, but when the Telosians are reading the ship's computers, and you know how they have to go through the images to make us know that they're going through the computer. I saw like JFK and I saw Lyndon Johnson and different things. I don't know if those are on there. Were they on the special editions?
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln shows up. JFK shows up. Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't quite sure. I had to look up which president it was because I was like, that's not Nixon, because this was before Nixon. So I was like, oh, Johnson. Okay, I got it. I got my Johnson and my Nixon confused, which happens.
Well, at that time, Johnson was still the vice president because Kennedy hadn't been assassinated yet.
Oh, wow. So maybe that's why.
No, it was 66, right?
And when did he get assassinated? We should know because we did a podcast all about
it. It's 11/22/66?
63.
63, 11/22. So he had been assassinated.
We did 104 hours on that. We can't remember.
It's late.
It's late. It is late. It's past 11, almost 11. It's almost 11. So final ratings and thoughts on season 1, episode 0 of Star Trek, The Cage.
Final thoughts. The women.
You
forgot about the women. The women. Yeah, I mean, what can I say that I haven't said? This is a fantastic episode. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic entry into Star Trek. It's a fantastic snapshot of all of the ideals that Star Trek would come to embody. It's a fantastic example of many of the problematic things that Star Trek will represent in the 60s. It's just head to toe. You could not ask for a better pilot. Like you said, I'm kind of glad that we got Where No Man Has Gone Before, because I love that episode too. Spoiler alert. Mm-hmm. But this is on every level a win. So I'm going to give it 5 chicken tuna sandwiches out of 5.
Oh, that's funny. I think this is an amazing pilot, probably one of the best pilots. I don't know, this and Broken Bow, but I got to give the lead to The Cage, maybe, just because it's so good and it stands on its own. And anything in something with a universe this big that stands on its own shouldn't be this good, but it is this good, and it does get better. And we learn more from it as we age and go through life, and different things apply. So the writing, the production quality, the costuming, the sets, everything from top to bottom is a win for me. I mean, there's some problematic things here and there, but it was the 60s. So we got to give it a pass, I think, on those, and not let one thing ruin everything. I think that's how they say it. So I'm gonna break the 5, even though it's a 1 to 5. I am actually going to go with 10 backwards birds.
Wow.
Yes.
Backwards birds. Why are they backwards?
Because the bird creature in the cage was going backwards. They reversed the footage. You remember?
To make him look eerie. He's supposed to look alien.
Weird. Yeah. So rewound bird wasn't alliterative, so I used backwards birds.
Gotcha. Backwards birds. So I feel like that bird was moving that way because he had too many chicken tuna sandwiches.
Chicken tuna sandwiches. You know what? My mom's got this like better Good Housekeeping cookbook old from the 60s. I'm going to look that up and see if it's in there. I get a lot of my episodes in that, but I substitute squirrel for like chicken or beef.
I think I just found a new bonus show that we can do for the Patreon feed. We're going to get recipes from our Treksplorers, and we're going to try them out. So we are going to kick this off. The inaugural episode is going to be the chicken tuna sandwich episode. I can't wait to do it. Is it on rye? Is it on Wonder Bread? Do you put it on a nice Italian bread? Watch
the episode again and zoom in and take screenshots and all that stuff.
A toasted buttered brioche? How do we do it?
Chicken tuna sandwiches. Never heard that before. How did I never hear that before? I don't know. But overall, great experience watching this episode. And let us know what you think about The Cage. I'm sure you have thoughts.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody out there, if you don't have thoughts on the cage, what are you doing, man?
What are you
Come
doing
on.
with your life?
So
you out there? You got a life? Is that what's going on?
I mean, yeah, you can get a life. You can find a life with us at patreon.com/Treksploration. That's where
Join
you can
our
leave your
crew.
thoughts. Join our crew. You can be the cook. You can have synthetic chicken tuna sandwiches for Thanksgiving. You can hit us up on Instagram at Treksploration Pod. You can X us at Treksploration. You can Gmail us at Treksploration@gmail.com. That's where we send emails to the Gmails. You can give us a call at 707-847-6682, and you can send me flash frozen chicken tuna sandwiches to P.O. Box 542, Bayport, New York 11705. That's P.O. Box 542, Bayport, New York 11705. So get in touch with us. We want to hear from all the Treksplorers out there, and we want to hear what you think about the cage. Did you dig it? Do you hate it? Is it too problematic for you? What do you think?
Yeah, send newspaper clippings with recipes for chicken tuna sandwiches.
Yes. Right? Yeah, send them over here at Time Warp Factor 7, please.
This reminded me, Neelix has a cookbook.
I heard about that.
Yeah, I might have to pick that up. I do not own it. I do not own it. So the next, what are we talking about next? Next in our bonus episodes, rewatch, we're going to the first episode of some series, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I didn't know what to put down, because are we going to be doing pilots of all the different series and cycling them? Is that what we decided? Or are we going to do Where No Man Has Gone Before?
Yes and no.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up.
Because if we were doing the pilots of all the series, technically the animated series is a separate series. But in my head and in my heart, I feel like the animated series is an additional series and add on to the original series. So I think those stories, I think we should do after the original series ends, the animated series, right?
Sure. I mean, I have no strong feelings about the animated series either way. However you want to run that is fine by me.
I don't want to go past them and do like other people do, where they do 2 or 3 episodes per, because they're just cartoons. I think the writing is worth watching and talking about. So I think after we get done with season 3 of the original series, for our original series rewatch, we'll start the animated series.
Okay, so you consider it all part and parcel. It's one contiguous thing. Okay.
Because we're both going to be talking about Kirk and Spock the whole time. So I think the next pilot we should do on our next bonus episode should be, since we're already doing Next Generation every week-ish, we should tackle the Emissary.
Wow, you want to go full DS9, huh?
Yep. And then after that, Caretaker. After that, Broken Bow.
Are all these going to be public on
the first few? Probably, just to get some more people on our crew and getting more of us out there, so people know what we do. And then at some point, those bonuses will go behind our view screens.
It's going to be weird, though. It's going to be weird talking about the Emissary when we're not even close to that point in the next gen storyline.
Yes, but I'm going to give us enough credit to do that.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's just they hinge on each other so much.
Mm-hmm.
They're so intricately woven together. I think that it's pretty amazing what they tried to do with DS9 and how they tried to, because it was the first spin-off of a spin-off. And they really tried to ground it. Oh, we're going to have such a good conversation.
We're going to have a good time. But I think you're looking forward to a little bit of DS9 too, right?
I'm always looking forward to a little bit of DS9.
so I think that's the way to go with that, is just we'll do episode 1s through the 90s Trek and original Trek.
So say it, the showrunner.
Yes. And then
so shall it be done.
Yes, and then of course we'll get to the animated series after we get done with the original series. But it looks like next on Next Generation we'll be doing Hide and Q, and then next on our bonus episodes we'll be doing Emissary.
All right,
you and me are going to go fishing on a bridge in California.
Go fishing on that bridge in California that Sam. Also, I think he was hiding under it during Leap Between the States. So
yes, and he was attacked by a white tiger on that same bridge. Yep, on that same bridge.
Named Snowflake, right?
Yep.
Snowball.
One strobe over the line.
Sweet Jesus.
So that bridge has a lot of history, and I'm sure we'll talk about that and a lot more. And for Treksploration, I'm Albie.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll see you next time.
With the women!
The women!